Chapter 33. Today's votes are good. Let's keep up the good work. Now there is only one name left on the newcomers list. If it wasn't for the fact that there are impurities in the list, it would have already reached the front page. Tomorrow, I ask the readers to help me get on the newcomers list. Even if it is the last day of the week, it will be a wish fulfilled. Is that okay? The so-called martial arts declaration was actually a life and death agreement. This family class evaluation was a competition for the status of the family. It was related to the rise and fall of the family. Of course, it was a fight to the death. There was no need to talk about feelings. Even if they were friends off the stage, they would become irreconcilable enemies on the stage. Defeating the opponent and defending the family's status was their only goal on the stage. The 5 families participating in the competition for the humble class seats were the Gu family of County City, the Wen family of County City, the Nyo family of Eastwood Town, the Lon family of Nine Du Town, and the Lee family of Nine Du Town. Among them, the Lee family was originally a humble class aristocrat and was the defender. The other 4 families were the challengers. But because the Gu family of County City, the Wen family of County City, and the Nyo family of Eastwood Town all challenged the Chin family for the humble class seat, and the Chin family went to fight for the wealthy class seat, the Chin family's seat would be decided by these 3 families. The other humble class seat would be decided by the Lon family and the Lee family of Nine Du Town. After the 5 humble class contending forces went on stage, they each made a passionate speech, signed a life and death agreement, and left the stage. Before the big battle, they didn't want to say anything. They just went all out. For the family, for the survival of the family, even if they bled and lost their lives, they would still go forward. The family was the foundation of survival. The family could share dangers and life and death. For the family, they would not hesitate to die. Among the prominent families, the Zhou family and the Xia family were both from County City. The 2 families usually had many conflicts in business and were also old enemies. After going on stage, they both gnashed their teeth and threatened to make their opponents die miserably. As for who would die miserably and who would be the winner, they would only know after the competition. At this time, the competition between the prominent families was not what everyone was looking forward to the most. They were looking forward to the competition for the wealthy class seat. Everyone wanted to know what mentality the Chin family had when they challenged the wealthy class. Did they really have the confidence to challenge the wealthy Su family? Everyone was waiting. First, the representative of the wealthy class Su family's challenge. The representative of the Su family was an uncle of Su Sanli, who was an elder of the Su family. The old man could tell at a glance that he was furious. His tone was contemptuous and angry. This old man has never heard of the Chin clan before, so I don't want to say anything. Only a few words. Ever since the Su clan gained power, anyone who dared to challenge the wealthy Su clan no longer exists. The Chin clan will not be an exception this time. This speech was arrogant and domineering, fully demonstrating the foundation of a wealthy family. Without strength, one would not dare to say such arrogant words. And this conversation was smooth and slick as it only focused on the Chin family and did not involve the venerable De Shi family. The person in charge smiled but didn't comment. He said to the Chin family, the Chin family should also send a representative up. At this point, Qin Lianshan had no way out. Just as he was about to step forward, he was stopped by Qin Wushuang. Qin Wushuang calmly walked up the stage. With a pair of determined eyes, he slowly opened his mouth to speak under the gaze of tens of thousands of people. Everyone, on the day I participated in the martial arts student exam. A few well-dressed aristocratic masters stopped me and my father and talked to us about the so-called aristocratic etiquette. One of them even warned my father that the key to being a person is to know when to advance and when to retreat. When it's time to let go, you must have the awareness to let go. Perhaps everyone doesn't know what he meant. To put it bluntly, Although this old master is from the wealthy class, he is still greedy and wants to take the Qin clan's property. He planned to use threats to make the Qin clan give up the humble class seat and hand over the property. I would like to ask everyone, in the martial arts world, is there such a thing as giving up without a fight? Who would be willing to be such a coward? This voice was loud and impassioned, and it was very provocative. Below the stage, people responded loudly, "No surrender, no coward." That's right. It's not strange that you want to take the Qin clan's property. In our Bayou country, survival of the fittest is the law of the jungle. If you have the skills, come and take it. As for who this wealthy class master is, I'm sure everyone can guess. That's right, it's Su Sanli, old Master Su. At that time, I told him that the Qin clan would leave the humble class seat for him. However, there was one thing that I did not say. Qin Wushuang paused for a moment, and the tens of thousands of people below the stage all shouted, "What is it?" Qin Wushuang smiled lightly and said, "What I wanted to say was, since old Master Su wants to take the humble class seat of the Qin clan, then he will exchange it with the wealthy class seat of the Su family." Suddenly, a cold light flashed across Su Sanli's eyes. His eyes were full of murderous intent. Qin Wushuang's words had truly touched his reverse scale as an elite warrior. Even if this Qin clan had the support of the venerable De Shi family, he was still too arrogant. Could it be that while the Qin clan had curried favor with the venerable De Shi family, my wealthy class Su family had not curried favor with a stronger backer? The venerable De Shi family was an invincible existence in River County. However, in the entire Bayou country, they were only the lowest class among the upper-class aristocrats. Su Sanli did not hide his murderous intent, and said with a cold tone, "Son of the Qin family, I will let you understand the meaning of regret." Qin Wushuang was not afraid and sneered, "I will wait. I say, Patriarch Su, you are still not calm enough. Don't forget. Sooner or later, you will have to pay for what you did. Could it be that only the Su family is allowed to scheme against me, and the Qin family is not allowed to scheme against you? Reciprocity is the law of fairness." Su Sanli was so angry that he laughed. "Ha ha, a little martial arts student is talking in his sleep. I would like to see what you have to talk about the law of fairness with me." Qin Wushuang smiled lightly and did not say anything else. However, the confidence on his face greatly influenced the people below the stage, causing them to burst into cheers. Su Sanli saw that the people below the stage were clearly provoking the Su family. Inwardly, he was furious. Could it be that this damned Qin family was more popular than the wealthy class Su family? He did not believe it. He saw that Qin Lianshan and his son only had 3 people, including a daughter who did not have the talent to practice martial arts. With such a small family, how could the Qin family challenge the wealthy class Su family? According to the rules, the competition for the humble class was the earliest. That person in charge said, "Patriarch Su, there is something that I must discuss with you." Su Sanli said lightly, "Please speak." According to the rules, the Qin family came to challenge the Su family. If the Su family wins, you will still be the wealthy class Su family, and the Qin family will automatically lose their humble class status. However, if the Qin family wins, they will replace the Su family's wealthy class status. And you, according to the rules, will be demoted to the Qin family's humble class status. However, the Qin family's humble class status has been challenged. Thus, if you want to fight for the humble class status, you must participate in this competition and secure your humble class seat. Inwardly, Su Sanli was furious. He thought inwardly, what kind of stupid rule was this? Were they looking down on the Su family? The humble class seat, were they using it to humiliate us? How could the wealthy class Su family lose? Immediately he refused. No need. It's only a humble class seat. The Su family does not put it in our eyes. He had helped the Gu family to get the humble class seat because he had his eyes on the Qin family's property, not the humble class seat. If the Su family wanted to fight for the humble class seat, they would not sacrifice the rook to save the pawn. They could not afford to lose face. Although fighting for the humble class seat was a way out in case they lost the battle for the wealthy class seat, they still had to fight for it. The person in charge did not force them. He nodded. All right, since you don't want to fight, then if the Su family loses the wealthy class competition, you will be demoted to the humble class status. You will not even have the humble class seat. Su Sanli said angrily, "Thank you for your concern. The Su family will not lose." The person in charge smiled. "I am only telling you the rules. This is also a form of respect for the wealthy class." Even so, from Su Sanli's point of view, this was a humiliation to the wealthy class Su family. Otherwise, why would they mention the humble class seat? In this way, Su Sanli had completely rejected this option. The person in charge said clearly, "Next, I will announce the rules of the class evaluation. The humble class seat vacated by the Qin family in Eastwood Town will be contested by 3 families. The final winner will obtain this seat. The Li family and the Lan family of Nine-Du Town will compete for the other humble class seat. The rules are as follows." After the announcement, no one objected. The rules were signed. The next step was the prominent class competition between the Zhou family and the Xia family. There was nothing to say. The winner would be the prominent class, and the loser would be the humble class. It was a game between the 2 families. They would either maintain their original status, or exchange their positions. The rules between the Qin family and the wealthy class Su family had already been stated. If the Qin family won, they would be promoted to the wealthy class, and the Su family would be demoted to the humble class. If they lost, the Su family would keep their wealthy class seat, and the Qin family would be demoted to the humble class. Patriarch Su, Patriarch Qin, about the rules of the competition, you can discuss the details. According to the rules, the humble class competition will be decided in 1 round, the prominent class competition will be decided in 3 rounds, and the wealthy class competition will be decided in 5 rounds. The person in charge was very patient. He must first set the rules and maintain fairness in this system. Neither the winner nor the loser would have anything to say. Su Sanli sneered. The Qin family has already lost if it is decided in 5 rounds. There were only 2 men in their family. They don't even have enough people to win 3 rounds. It seems that the rules also state that one person can win 5 rounds in a row? Qin Wushuang said slowly. One person can win 5 rounds in a row. Are you sure your brain hasn't been squeezed by a door? Su Sanli sneered. The person in charge interrupted. One person can win 5 rounds in a row, there are rules. However, it is very difficult to be fair. What if one family only has one strong warrior, and the others are very ordinary, and this strong warrior is just a little stronger than the other strong families? If one person can win 5 rounds in a row, he will take advantage of the loophole. Qin Wushuang nodded to show that he understood. It was like a family that only had one Stage 5 genuine Force Realm warrior, and he defeated 5 Stage 3 or Stage 4 genuine Force Realm warriors from another family. This was a typical case of taking advantage of the loophole. In terms of average strength, the latter family was definitely stronger. However, the former family only had one strong warrior to fight in a row. Of course, it was unfair. If there are rules, then let's follow the rules. Qin Wushuang had already studied the rules thoroughly, so he had a card up his sleeve. If we really follow the rules, the first battle will be 1-on-1. The second battle will be 1 against 2. And so on, until the 5th battle, it will be 1 against 5. That person in charge reminded. The rules dictate that it will be very difficult for one person to fight in a row. Qin Wushuang said leisurely. Isn't it supposed to win 3 out of 5 battles? We don't have to drag it to the 5th battle. That person in charge said. Then the person from the Qin family must have the ability to fight 1 against 3. This way you can guarantee that you can win 3 rounds. 1 against 3? Qin Wushuang laughed and said lightly. Then let's fight 1 against 3. As soon as he said these words, the audience went into an uproar. This martial arts student was crazy. He wanted to fight 1 against 3, and it was against the wealthy class Su family, who in the Qin family had such swift and fierce fighting power. Even Patriarch Qin Lianshan could not help but feel surprised. His body trembled slightly, and he could not help but stand up. Chapter 34. At this time, Su Sanli had completely regarded Qin Wushuang as an idiot. 1 against 3 with just Qin Lianshan and his son? It was an international joke. However, to prevent cheating, he still said, "Mr. Judge, for this competition, only the direct descendants from the household register can fight, right? Guest elders, branch disciples, and so on, they are not allowed to fight, right?" Of course. The person in charge did not hesitate. Then, in the Qin household register, only Qin Lianshan and his son are considered direct descendants, right? The person in charge nodded. That's right. When the time comes, both sides will check each other's household register to prevent imposters. Whoever impersonates will be disqualified. Su Sanli sneered. That's good. This way, even if the Qin family had the venerable De Shi family's secret support, they would not be afraid. No matter how strong you are, it would be useless if you were not in the household register and could not fight. Besides, when it came to a fight between families, regardless of how much support the third party had, in the end, it would still be the direct descendants who would fight. When the person in charge saw that both sides had agreed to the rules, he announced, "Since both sides have agreed, then it's decided. Both sides will send their direct descendants to fight, and no favoritism is allowed. Also, if the humble Qin family sends one person to fight, then the Su family can only fight once. In order to show fairness, each disciple could only fight once at most. No matter which round they fought in, they could not fight twice. Otherwise, it would become a meaningless war of attrition." After both sides verified that there were no mistakes, they signed the agreement and stamped the family seal. That Su Sanli said with a cold tone, "Qin Lianshan, let me give you a piece of advice. Go home and prepare a thin coffin. No matter which one of you is going to fight, you will need it." However, Qin Wushuang sneered on the side. "How could one coffin be enough? Prepare at least 6 coffins, then it will be enough to hold the entire Su family." That person in charge also felt strange as he listened to the two sides bickering. Under normal circumstances, in this competition for the family seat, people would keep their killing intent to themselves and would not say much. However, these two families had already started to bicker before they had even started fighting. Of course, they could only bicker. The wealthy class seat competition was the finale of this year's family class evaluation. Of course, it would be the last. The first day of the class evaluation was the competition for the humble class seat. The first seat up for grabs was the humble class seat vacated by the Qin family. The 3 forces vying for this seat were the Gu clan of the county city, the 1 clan of the county city, and the Nyo clan of Eastwood town. The competition between the 3 families was based on a circular competition system. Qin Wushuang looked at the representatives of these 3 powerhouses on the stage coldly. Although the Qin family had gone to fight for the wealthy class seat, these 3 powerhouses had been eyeing the Qin family's humble class seat covetously. Now, as expected, in the end, only these 3 families were fighting for it. Qin Wushuang didn't have a good impression of these 3 forces either. These powers dared to covet the Qin clan's humble class seat, because they had underestimated the Qin clan and wanted to bully the Qin clan. That Gu family was the power that old Master Su secretly supported. He had made an agreement with Su Sanli beforehand. Once he succeeded, the humble class seat would belong to the Gu family, and the Su family would get 70% of the Qin family's property. This was also the reason why Su Sanli was eyeing the Qin family covetously. The Wen family was the family of Zhang Maorui's wife's uncle. Although they had signed up, with Su Sanli's help, they had already given up. "Father, there is nothing to see in this competition. I want to go back to the inn first." Qin Wushuang didn't have much interest in this level of competition. He didn't want to waste time. In fact, Qin Lianshan was also angry when he saw this. He knew that these people were fighting for the humble class seat that originally belonged to the Qin family. The more he thought about it, the more sullen he felt. Although the Qin family's competition for the wealthy class seat had given him a lot of face, his humble class seat had been challenged. This was the most serious offense in the aristocratic circle. Surprisingly, Qin Xiu didn't want to join in the fun and agreed. "Okay, let's go back." The wealthy class battle was the highlight of the competition and was scheduled to take place 10 days later. In these 10 days, they could come if they wanted to watch the competition. If they didn't want to, they could choose not to attend. Of course, there weren't many people who were as free and easy as Qin Wushuang. Every 20 years, the family class evaluation would be a life and death battle. In each battle, someone would fall. It was definitely exciting and a feast for the eyes. Thus, other people would not miss it unless they had something important to do. When they returned to the inn, Qin Lianshan gazed at Qin Wushuang and sighed lightly. "Wushuang, there are some things that I have been holding back in my stomach. I didn't ask you these questions, but today I really want to clarify these things. Or else I will not feel at ease." Qin Wushuang knew what his father wanted to ask. He said calmly, "Father, please ask." Qin Lianshan did not speak immediately. He still looked at his son with deep meaning. If it were any other children, 16 years old would still be a young teenager. They would still be enjoying the fun of being a teenager. However, his son was already able to take charge. This made him feel both gratified and guilty. "Wushuang, I know that you have worked hard since you were young. However, no matter how hard you work, it would be impossible for you to reach the genuine force at your age. At least, in the history of River County, there is no record of it. Tell me, did you get some fortuitous encounter when you were training in the Great Song Mountains every day?" Qin Xiu blinked her eyes. "Fortuitous encounter? What fortuitous encounter?" Qin Wushuang smiled. "Father, you are right. The fortuitous encounter you mentioned did happen to me. As for what kind of fortuitous encounter it was, even if I told you now, you would not believe me. The only thing I can promise is that when I do things, I will not let down the heavens and all the ancestors of the Qin family." "Good." A light flashed across Qin Lianshan's eyes. He thought about the shocking changes his son had undergone in these 3 or 4 years. Every step he took, he knew what he was doing. Immediately, his hanging heart gradually returned to its original place. He said seriously, "Wushuang, with your words I am relieved. From now on, I will not ask any more. From today onwards, I will support whatever you decide to do with the Qin family." The father and son looked at each other and smiled. The connection between their blood was clearly shown in this smile. Qin Xiu said lightly, "Father, our Wushuang has really grown up." "Yes, the Qin family finally has a descendant." Qin Lianshan sighed with relief. Qin Xiu pulled Qin Wushuang's hand and let him sit next to her. She asked seriously, "Wushuang, tell me, do you have the confidence to win against the Su family?" Qin Lianshan also gazed at Qin Wushuang. This was the question he wanted to ask but held back. He did not forget to add, "If you do not have the confidence, then the Qin family should take a step back. I believe the ancestors of the Qin family will understand." Qin Lianshan comforted his son like this because he wanted to leave a way out for his son. Where there is life, there is hope. To the humble class, the wealthy class Su family was indeed a giant existence. Although Qin Lianshan did not want the Qin family to lose the humble class seat in his hands, he was still willing to bear this bad reputation for the long term. As long as his son could bring back the dignity and glory that the family had lost, so what if he sacrificed a little bit of his reputation? It was just like the oath he had made to his ancestors in the ancestral house. He, Qin Lianshan, would bear all the blame, and all the glory and blessings would be enjoyed by his son, Qin Wushuang. Qin Lianshan had his own plans. The family class evaluation was held every 20 years. 20 years later, his son would only be 36 years old and would be at the peak of his power. Qin Wushuang knew his father's good intentions. His eyes shone with determination as he gazed at his father and sister. "Father, sister, I promise you, this time I will bring back all the dignity and status that the Qin family had lost. The wealthy class Su family will be the first stepping stone for the Qin family to return to its former glory." Qin Wushuang's words revealed a strong sense of confidence, which affected Qin Lianshan and Qin Xiu. Qin Lianshan could not help but rub his hands together. Thinking that the Qin family had the hope of restoring the glory of the wealthy class, his heart surged with excitement just thinking about it. Although he was already 48 years old, the blood that flowed in his bones was still unyielding. This blood was closely related to the fate of the family. Even if he was old, it would not cool down. Qin Xiu choked with sobs as she wiped her tears. Her eyes were red and she was extremely emotional. Qin Wushuang's heart was also affected by an indescribable emotion. He was very clear about the importance of the family in this world. The reason why his father and sister were so emotional was because deep in their souls, they were bound together with the family. The rise and fall of the family determined the honor and disgrace of an individual. It even determined the life and death of a family. Even if it was to let his family straighten their backs and hold their heads higher, he had to take back the wealthy class seat. Although the benefits of taking back the wealthy class seat were far more than that. However, in the depths of Qin Wushuang's heart, what he cared about the most was precisely this. He wanted his father to smile more and for his sister to be able to marry into a respectable family in the future. Qidian Chinese website welcomes all readers to read the latest, fastest, and most popular series of novels at Qidian Originals. Chapter 35. In the meeting hall of the Su family, more than 20 male members of the main force had gathered. In the past, the Qin family was like an ant to them. However, once their position was threatened, each and every member of the Su family felt as if someone had touched their ancestral grave. Each of their faces was filled with anger, and the atmosphere was extremely solemn. Su Sanli was the current patriarch of the Su family. In his previous generation, there were 2 elders who were at the same level as his uncle. They were both genuine force warriors like him. And in his generation, there were 6 Su clansmen of the same clan. And in the next generation, there were 17. Among these 26 offspring of the Su family, 12 of them had entered the genuine force. It was also the reason why the Su family could be listed as one of the 4 great families in River County. The wealthy class Su family was not a paper tiger in River County. They had the strength to back them up. Su Sanli did not speak a word. With a profound expression, he glanced across the hall coldly. After a while, he slowly opened his mouth. "Offspring of the Su family, I believe that your blood must be boiling right now. If you still remember your family name, then be 120% alert." Roar. All the offspring of the Su family let out a wolf-like howl. It was the usual way of encouraging the Su family. The Su family has been a wealthy class for more than 100 years. After 6 family class evaluations, the wealthy class has always been as stable as a mountain. However, today, someone has started to look down on the Su family's name. Regardless of who the opponent is, the Su family's motto is, "Attack with all our strength. We will not stop until we have destroyed the enemy." Su Sanli's fist slammed down on the chair, and the good wooden chair collapsed with a loud crash. Roar. All the offspring of the Su family could feel the patriarch's anger. In fact, they were also angry. With the current status of the Su family, regardless of winning or losing, They had already lost some face after being challenged at the family class evaluations. Why didn't they challenge the Yun family or the Qian family? Why did they choose the Su family? To put it bluntly, they thought that among the three wealthy class, the Su family was the easiest to bully. This challenge was not as simple as offending them. It also involved the authority of the wealthy class. Among the two most senior elders of the Su family, that one with only one eye said coldly, "Patriarch, I must say something. This matter was not just a challenge to the prestige of the Su family. We must attach great importance to it and treat it as a matter of life and death." Su Sanli nodded. Uncle Kai's words are reasonable. The duels in the family class evaluation are related to the family's status and honor. It is a fight to the death. I hereby announce that everyone who takes part in this battle must fight with all their might. No matter how strong or weak the opponent is, the ultimate goal must be to kill the opponent. The one-eyed uncle nodded. He was satisfied with Su Sanli's attitude and did not say anything else. Another elder, Elder Yu, spoke up. "I'm 97 years old this year." He had gone through 4 family class evaluations. What must be mentioned was that any clan that dared to apply for the right to challenge would not be without any confidence. The family class evaluation was not a game. Since the Qin family dares to challenge our Su family, they must have a trump card behind them. Su Sanli pondered. He had pondered over this question repeatedly. He didn't believe that the Qin clan didn't have any trump cards. The series of events that had happened that day had given him too much of an impact. It was still vivid in his mind, and whenever he thought about it, he would feel uneasy. A warrior from the Zhen Wu holy place had delivered a letter to the son of the Qin family. The story behind this was definitely profound. Qin Lianshan was a steady person. Logically speaking, he wouldn't be crazy enough to challenge the wealthy Su family without any assurance of winning. Unless everyone in the Qin family was tired of living. Without a doubt, the humble Qin family must have grasped some unknown trump card. However, what kind of trump card did the Qin family have? Only Qin Lianshan and his son could fight. One of them was at stage 1 of the genuine force, and the other was a stage 7 martial arts student. Even if they were to add 2 more levels on top of this foundation, it would still be insignificant to the Su family. Regardless of how one looked at it, the humble Qin family did not seem to have the qualifications to challenge the wealthy Su family. Even if they had made friends with people from the Zhen Wu holy place, they would not be able to cheat in this family class evaluation. They would still need to rely on their strength. Uncles, in your opinion, will the Qin family send Qin Lianshan or Qin Wushuang? Su Sanli still could not figure out this question. That elder Yu thought for a moment and also shook his head. He could not be sure. However, that one-eyed uncle said, "Regardless of which one of them is going to fight, we must send our strongest team." As for how to arrange this lineup, it had to be carefully planned. Of course, the Qin father and son might be using a smoke bomb to make us change our strategy. Elder Yu also said, "That's right. Maybe both father and son are going to fight, but they purposely said that one person will fight until the end. They want to disturb our strategy." Su Sanli nodded and said, "Yes, no matter how they try to act mysterious, we will not be afraid as long as we are not messed up. Regardless, the first battle will be one-on-one. Let's test the strength of the other party. We cannot send our strongest, but we cannot send our weakest. Who wants to fight first?" One of his younger brothers, Su Wugen, stood up and patted his chest. "Patriarch, I will fight first." This Su Wugen was the vanguard of their generation. He had a violent personality and used cruel methods. Once, because of a family dispute, he had personally slaughtered a family of 36 people. He was the famous butcher of the Su family. This person was at stage 3 of the genuine force and ranked in the top 5 in the family. "I think Wugen will fight first," that Uncle Kai said. Okay, then let Brother Wugen fight first. This second round is very important. Regardless of winning or losing the first round, we must not lose the second round. I would like to ask one of the two uncles to lead. Su Sanli said. I will do it. Uncle Kai opened his only eye. If the Qin sends someone else, I will take care of it. If it is still the same person from the first round, I will take my son for the second round. Su Sanli was overjoyed. If Uncle Kai is willing to fight, we will win the second round for sure. For the third round, I plan to lead Su Qing and Su Ming. Su Qing and Su Ming were the twins of Su Sanli's generation. They were both at stage 2 of the genuine force and had exceptional strength. Uncle Kai nodded. That's right, if we win the first 2 rounds, we can win the third round in one go. It would be good for you to fight first. If there is a fourth round, please go. Uncle Kai looked at that elder you. That elder nodded. It's my duty to take care of the family's business. I am not afraid of the reputation of having 4 against 1. I will lead the fourth round myself. Su Sanli smiled confidently. With the 2 uncles and me leading the team, we will win the fourth round. For sure, we will be able to win within 4 rounds. Of course, we must not let down our guard for this 5th round. We will send the 5 strongest disciples from the family to fight. It's better to be prepared. With this arrangement, it meant that all 12 genuine force warriors from the wealthy Su family had been assigned to fight. Compared to the Qin family, this lineup looked like a lion hunting a rabbit. However, since it was related to the rise and fall of the family, no one felt that they were making a mountain out of a molehill. Nothing in the family was a small matter. At the same time, in the castle of the venerable De Shi family in River County, a middle-aged man dressed in embroidered clothing was sitting in the study room. He was playing chess with an elder of the family. This middle-aged man dressed in embroidered clothing had a gentle appearance. His facial features were somewhat similar to De Shi Ming's. He was De Shi Heng, the current patriarch of the venerable De Shi family. Heng, I heard that the wealthy Su family is not having a good time recently? The elder opposite De Shi Heng had a pair of eagle eyes, a hooked nose, and a fierce appearance. De Shi Heng calmly placed a white chess piece into the chessboard and smiled. There are not many smart people in the Su family. Sooner or later, they will encounter problems. Only, this time, the problem is more interesting. Indeed. The eagle-eyed elder put down a black chess piece. The humble Qin family is challenging the wealthy Su family directly. In the history of River County, a family class evaluation challenge that is 2 levels higher than them has never happened before, right? Heng, have you investigated what new methods the Qin family has? The Qin family has a long history in River County. Their ancestors were once a wealthy class family. 100 years ago, after a large group of Qin children had disappeared, they had fallen into a depression. However, I don't believe that Qin Lianshan could pose a threat to the Su family. Most likely, the problem lies with his level 7 martial arts student son. De Shi Heng spoke at a neither fast nor slow pace. His calm expression and tone made it seem as if he would still be the same even if the sky were to collapse. Level 7 martial arts student? The eagle-eyed elder frowned. Since when did a level 7 martial arts student become so enchanting? Isn't Yang Er a level 8 martial arts student? De Shi Heng said. I don't know how enchanting a level 7 martial arts student is. However, I remember Ming Er had told me a few days ago that a level 7 martial arts student had instantly killed a warrior at the peak of the power force in a duel at the river square. A level 7 martial arts student had instantly killed a warrior at the peak of the power force? The eagle-eyed elder's black chess piece stopped in the middle of the air and did not put it down. Heng, are you joking? Ming Er does not look like a kid who would speak without thinking, right? De Shi Heng laughed. Ming Er. This poor child, has he returned to the family recently? De Shi Heng's face was calm and he did not answer this question. He fixed his gaze on the chessboard and did not speak for a while. Suddenly, he gave a long sigh. On his calm expression, he could not help but show some disinterest. He must go back. He is already 27 years old, and he knows a lot of things. No matter how much he tries to avoid it, he still has to face it. However, I see that he is much more cheerful this time. In fact, in his heart, he would never forget his identity as an offspring of the de Shi family. This child. As his father, I have let him down. That elder waved his hand. Ahung, this matter is not only your responsibility, but also the shame of the de Shi family. Under that situation, it would be difficult for you not to agree. The Shi Men family is ranked 5th among the 12 great feudal lords in Bayou country. Regardless of power or status, they are enough to crush the de Shi family. They want to marry their daughter to the de Shi family. Speaking of which, they are condescending. De Shiheng gave a bitter sigh. I don't need this kind of condescension. Every time I see Ming Er's sad expression as his father, my heart feels even more painful than a knife. The reputation of that Missy from the Shi Men family is terrible. I heard that she also has an unclear relationship with the elder of the Shi Men family. She is not someone who can be described as cheerful. The elder also said with a sad tone, Ahung, even if she is a sow, we must marry her if the Shi Men family wants to marry her. Or else, if the Shi Men family gets angry, in less than half a month, the de Shi family will disappear from the Bayou country. Ming Er, as an offspring of the de Shi family, it would be best if he could understand. Even if he could not, he must understand. A helpless and bitter smile emerged on de Shiheng's face. These are the words I always say to him. However, in these recent days I saw that he kept going out. He mentioned the Qin family to me a few times and spoke highly of Qin Lianshan's daughter. I am worried that at this critical moment, he might have other ideas. Qin Lianshan's daughter. The elder was stunned and then shook his head with determination. Ahung, you must keep an eye on him. Don't think too much. If something were to happen at this time, not only would it implicate the de Shi family, the Qin family would also get involved. I will warn him. De Shiheng put down a white chess piece and said with a smile, Senior uncle, you lost this round again, right? The elder was stunned. He stared at the chessboard for a while and said meaningfully, Ahung, you are now the patriarch of the de Shi family. You are used to being a winner. There is one more update in the morning. Qidian website welcomes all readers to read. The newest, fastest, and most popular works are all original works at Qidian. Chapter 36. Updated at midnight. In the new week, the final battle for the ranking has begun. Hee brother, I'll shoot 3 times first. Brothers, follow me. Please log in first. Left member, click, right vote, charge. Qin Wushuang sat cross-legged, took a deep breath, and slowly retracted the internal strength flowing through his meridians. This was something he had to do every day. His internal strength strengthened his muscles, meridians, and bones. This was a cultivation method that combined internal and external strength, and was very beneficial to his cultivation. The internal strength of blazing sun art in his body was extremely masculine. Every time he condensed it between his fingers, he was still unable to grasp the force properly. Once this force was formed, he could move as he pleased, like a boat moving in the water, or his clothes fluttering in the wind. He would definitely be able to smoothly form the energy of coagulated sword into an invisible sword aura. After years of hard work, Qin Wushuang had continuously strengthened his training in this area. He was already able to release the energy, but he was still lacking when it came to forming sword aura. To be specific, he was able to release the energy from his fingers, but this energy was scattered and not condensed. Once it was released from his fingers, it could not be retracted and could not be condensed. The sword aura of coagulated sword could only be formed when the energy was condensed into one. Only then could it be formed into an invisible sword aura. The core principle of coagulated sword lay in the word condense. Only when the internal strength was condensed together, the sword aura formed would have a powerful killing power. Qin Wushuang knew that it wasn't that his talent was insufficient, nor was it that his training method was wrong. The biggest reason why he was still unable to skillfully use coagulated sword was because of his lack of control. The time he had spent cultivating in this life was still too short. When it came to controlling the fire, he couldn't use any tricks. He could only rely on hard work every day to master it. He was currently in the process of quantitative change. Once the fire reached the right level, it would form a qualitative change. There was absolutely no problem if the coagulated sword came without being summoned. Now, he was just waiting for an opportunity to break through, waiting for the qualitative change to arrive. The battle for the wealthy class ranking was about to begin. Qin Wushuang wouldn't allow himself to slack off even a little. For a wealthy clan, the minimum requirement was to have a Stage 4 true martial realm expert in charge. Qin Wushuang speculated that the Su clan should have at least 3 Stage 4 genuine martial realm martial artists. The strongest one should have the strength of a Stage 5 true martial realm martial artist. If it was a one-on-one fight, Qin Wushuang would not put a Stage 5 genuine martial realm martial artist in his eyes. As early as a year ago, his inner strength had already reached Stage 7 of the genuine martial realm. Now that he had mastered the 8th palm of the 9 yang palms, desolation of the 8 suns, he was confident that he would not be defeated even if he fought against a Stage 8 warrior of the genuine force. As long as it wasn't a Stage 9 true martial realm martial artist, Qin Wushuang could rely on congealing finger and 9 yang palms to look down on any martial artist below Stage 8 true martial realm. Therefore, Qin Wushuang was still very confident about the Su family's battle. However, while Qin Wushuang could look down on his opponent in terms of strategy, he was never careless when it came to actual operations. No matter how weak the opponent was, he could not let his guard down in actual combat. Qin Wushuang estimated that no matter who the Su family sent out in the first round, he would definitely win in a one-on-one fight. In the second round, he was also 100% sure that he would win in a one-on-two fight. The key was the third round. If the Su family sent out their strongest 3-man team, 1 Stage 5 genuine martial realm martial artist and 2 Stage 4 genuine martial realm martial artists, the strength of such a 3-man team would definitely not lose to a Stage 6 genuine martial realm martial artist. If they cooperated well and used reasonable tactics, it was not impossible to fight a Stage 7 genuine martial realm martial artist. Having the ability to fight a Stage 7 genuine martial realm martial artist did not allow Qin Wushuang to be the slightest bit careless. Qin Wushuang did not want to be entangled with the Su family until the 4th or 5th round. The sooner he finished the battle, the better. When facing an enemy, the biggest taboo was to be hesitant and not be decisive. Of course, these plans were built on the basis that his father would not fight. For the past few days, his father had been using the black and white chess pieces to calculate the pros and cons. Apparently, he was also worried about the arrangement of the troop. It seemed that he had to find time to communicate with his father. Just as Qin Wushuang was deep in thought, the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside the door. It was his sister Qin Xiu. Wushuang, Wushuang. When Qin Xiu was 7 or 8 meters away from the door, she realized that she should not disturb her brother. She tried her best to walk quietly to the door and lightly knocked on it. Qin Wushuang opened the door. "Sister, come in." "Wushuang, quickly go out and take a look. Big brother De Shi is drunk again. He's drinking, singing, and crying. I'm worried to death." When Qin Wushuang saw his sister's helpless expression, his heart was moved. Inwardly, he blamed himself for being careless. These days, De Shiming came to this in every 2 or 3 days. He rarely talked with him, and spent more time with his sister. Looking at his sister's expression, perhaps she had feelings for Big Brother De Shi? Let's go and take a look. Qin Wushuang had a good impression of De Shi Ming. He was also one of the rare young talents in River County. He had a completely different temperament from those so-called aristocratic young masters. He was generous and noble. Before they had reached the main hall, Qin Wushuang heard De Shi Ming singing with a sad voice. Heaven and earth are the furnaces, nature is the workmanship, yin and yang are the charcoal, all living things are the copper. He grabbed the wine jug, tilted his head back, and gulped it down. After drinking for a while, he put down the jug, clapped his hands and sang again. My body is like a leaf in the wind, my heart is like a boat in the turbulent current. Unwilling to do either, how can I be sad? After he finished singing, he drank another big gulp of wine. Then, he bent over the table and started to cry. He did not care about the hundreds of frightened eyes around him. Qin Wushuang could not understand. This De Shi Ming had an elegant demeanor and was the most excellent person among the younger generation in River County. He was the head of the 7 young masters. He lacked neither fame nor wealth. Why did he feel so sad? His body was like a leaf in the wind. His heart was like a boat in the turbulent current. Was there something he could not decide? Big Brother De Shi, why are you drinking alone and not calling me? Qin Wushuang walked to the table and sat down. De Shi Ming raised his head and saw Qin Wushuang. He was overjoyed and grabbed Qin Wushuang's arm. Good brother, come and drink with me. Qin Xiu grabbed the wine jug in De Shi Ming's hand. She bit her lips lightly and looked at De Shi Ming seriously. Big Brother De Shi, don't drink anymore. De Shi Ming was stunned. Under Qin Xiu's gentle and caring gaze, his resentment turned into tenderness. He sighed. Since little sister Xiu doesn't want me to drink, then I won't drink. Qin Xiu's cheeks were slightly red, but her eyes were shining with happiness. De Shi Ming's way of addressing her made her feel very comfortable and warm. Her heart was beating violently. Qin Wushuang found it funny inwardly. He thought that his sister and Big Brother De Shi were developing fast. They were already calling each other Big Brother De Shi and Little Sister Xiu. In this world, the love between men and women was very free. There were no rules or morals to restrict them. However, the freedom of love between men and women did not mean that they could easily get together. There were even more terrifying shackles than rules and morals that restricted most of the men and women in love. In the end, they could not be together. These shackles were the strict hierarchy of the rich and powerful families. For an offspring of a venerable family like De Shi Ming and a humble class girl like Qin Xiu, it would not be easy to jump over these 3 levels. When Qin Wushuang heard De Shi Ming singing those sad songs, he felt that most likely, this matter was not as simple as it seemed. However, Qin Wushuang thought about it and came up with an idea. He wanted to know if this De Shi Ming was sincere to his sister. If he was sincere, as long as his sister liked him, he would complete this matter no matter what. For the Qin family, his sister had not married at 22 years old. She had already sacrificed a lot. If she could not even follow her heart, how could he, as her little brother, feel at ease? As for that demon, it would be best if he did not come out. If he did, Qin Wushuang would make him pay the price. Big Brother De Shi, I want to ask you, are you interested in my sister? Qin Wushuang suddenly asked. Qin Xiu did not expect that her little brother would suddenly ask such a question, and in such a straightforward manner. Her face turned red. De Shi Ming was extremely calm and did not evade the question. Facing Qin Wushuang's questioning gaze, he nodded and said, Little brother, I, De Shi Ming, have lived for 27 years, and there has never been a girl that could make me feel that way. Until that time when I met you and your sister at the Windy Pool restaurant, I deeply felt that this was a gift from the heavens. I, De Shi Ming, have always been open and honest. I dare to love and hate. That's right, not only do I have feelings for your sister, I am deeply in love with her and cannot pull myself away. Qin Xiu gave a light cry of She did not expect that Big Brother De Shi would be so straightforward and could analyze her thoughts so clearly. A wave of happiness emerged spontaneously. Qin Xiu was also a girl who dared to love and hate. How could she not have fallen in love with De Shi Ming at first sight? Only, as a girl, it was inappropriate for her to sit in this kind of situation. She retreated with a red face. I am going to talk to father, I am not going to listen to your nonsense. Qin Wushuang did not stop him. He looked at his sister's departing figure and said emotionally, Big Brother De Shi, I am very touched by your words that came from the bottom of your heart. However, I need to remind you that your venerable De Shi family and my humble Qin family are a few levels apart. This matter is not easy to deal with. He was probing to see if in De Shi Ming's heart, which was more important, the aristocratic family's prejudice or true love. De Shi Ming shook his head sadly. If it's the aristocratic family's prejudice, then I, De Shi Ming, see it as grass. I will marry whoever I want. How could I be burdened by those stupid prejudices? Then when I heard Big Brother De Shi's song, it sounded so sad and miserable, and it sounded like the future was bleak. De Shi Ming gave a long sigh. He could not help but reach for the wine cup. Then, he remembered Qin Xiu's previous attempt to stop him and put it down. He sighed. This matter is the shame of the De Shi family. It's been spread around River County. Only, no one dares to talk about it in public. Brother, how could you not know? At the moment, he did not hide it and told him everything about how the Shi Men family had forced the marriage. After Qin Wushuang heard it, he was speechless for a while. The Shi Men family? Ranked 5th among the 12 great feudal lords in Bayou country? This matter was more than just a little troublesome. Chapter 37. P.S. The storm has begun. Today will be the day of the explosion. For the specific plan, please see the notice in the book. Make it to 3rd place on the credibility list, and update 5 chapters today. Make it to 2nd place and update 1 more chapter. How about it? How to make it to the credibility list does not depend on the author's word count, but the reader's clicks and recommendation vote. Thus, please log in to your Qidian account, click, and vote. Not only the main character, but also the author and the readers. They are all fighting for a breath of air. Go. De Shi Ming let out a long sigh as he felt dispirited. This unexpected news also shocked Qin Wushuang greatly. The Shi Men feudal lords, the biggest overlord in the South Cloud state. They ruled over 8 counties in the state. They were extremely powerful and had many elite warriors. Not only were they the only feudal lord family in the 2,000 or 3,000 miles of South Cloud State, they were also ranked 5th among the 45 feudal lord powerhouses in the Bayou country. The core of the Bayou country was ruled by the emperor. He had given the 4 royal territories. Each royal territory ruled over 8 states. In total, there were 32 states in the country. Each state ruled over 8 counties, and each county ruled over 20 or 30 towns. Under each town, there were also many villages of various sizes. These levels of powerhouses formed the ruling system of the Bayou country. Usually, there was a venerable family ruling over the county city. And next to the county city, there would be a feudal lord powerhouse. Further up, there were the royal cities of the 4 major territories. All of them were ruled by the 4 royal families of the Bayou country. And the core of the Bayou country was the imperial capital. It was where the emperor resided and where the Zhen Wu holy place was located. In River County, the venerable De Shi family held the supreme authority. No one dared to challenge their authority. However, in the South Cloud State, the venerable De Shi family's position would be greatly reduced. In one state, there were at least 8 venerable families, or even more. It was because besides the venerable families in each county, they also existed in the county city. Only, regardless of how many venerable families there were, within a state, the feudal lord powerhouse would always be the highest authority. The power of a feudal lord was equivalent to 5 venerable families combined. And in terms of elite warriors, they also held an overwhelming advantage. The minimum requirement for a venerable family was a stage 6 genuine force warrior. And the feudal lords required a stage 8 genuine warrior. The gap between these two ranks was enough to make countless aristocratic families look up to the great clans. Qin Wushuang was not unfamiliar with this. Of course, he understood the source of De Shiming's pain. Shimen clan as the only major power of South Cloud Prefecture, if Shimen clan wants to marry their daughter to you, how can you not accept? Not to mention the strength of the Shimen family. Regardless of using soft or hard methods, they could easily suppress the venerable De Shi family. One had to know that there were 32 states in the country, and each state had a tycoon force. Including the 4 capital cities and the imperial capital, there were more than 10 tycoon forces. In total, there were 45 tycoon forces. With so many feudal lord powerhouses, the 12 strongest feudal lords were called the 12 great feudal lords in the Baiyu country. They were the core ruling powerhouses in the Baiyu country, and the Shimen family was ranked 5th among the 12 great feudal lords. Indeed, this power would make the De Shi family feel powerless. Big brother De Shi, what are your plans? Qin Wushuang wanted to know De Shi Ming's bottom line. A trace of perseverance emerged on De Shi Ming's handsome face. He said in a low voice, "Little brother Wushuang, in this life, if I can't be with your sister after marrying that girl from the Shimen family, I would rather die. It's not that I don't have any thoughts of resistance. If I were alone and without any worries, I would have already rejected this forced marriage. But each of my actions is related to the survival of the De Shi family." Qin Wushuang listened in silence, and did not express his opinion. De Shi Ming said sadly, "Since I cannot resist while I am alive, perhaps only death can free me, right? Death?" Qin Wushuang said lightly, "Big brother De Shi, you talk about death so easily. How could you be the person my sister would entrust her life to?" "Of course, I will not talk about death so easily." De Shi Ming suddenly lowered his voice. "I plan to find a chance to fake my death. Then, I will leave South Cloud State and practice martial art. When I have mastered my strength, I will not fear anyone from the Shimen family and return to River County. Only, in this case, your sister will have to suffer and wander with me." Qin Wushuang lightly nodded. This was probably the best method De Shi Ming could think of. He would use a roundabout way to avoid the marriage. However, De Shi Ming might be able to endure such a life as a fugitive. His sister, Qin Xiu, did not have any martial arts skills. He was afraid that after a long time, she would not be able to live a life as a vagrant. This would be a big problem. Besides, Qin Wushuang had lived 2 lives and viewed his sister as the most important thing in his life. How could he let Qin Xiu go through such suffering? He would never let his sister go through such suffering. Besides, that Shimen family was not stupid. If they wanted to see her alive or dead, it would not be easy to deal with them. There was only one way to solve this problem. He had to suppress the Shimen family and make them unable to interfere even if they wanted to. When Qin Wushuang thought of this idea, he became bold. "Big brother De Shi, how powerful is this Shimen family?" Qin Wushuang decided to understand the power of the Shimen family first. The Shimen family was certainly not simple to be able to make the De Shi family this scared. They were ranked 5th among the 12 great feudal lords, and had an imposing aura. They could even force their daughter to marry off. It was apparent that this Shimen family was not ordinary. To be ranked 5th among the 12 great feudal lords, the power of the Shimen family should be comparable to the combined power of all the aristocratic families in the 8 counties of South Cloud State. I heard that the Shimen family has 4 or 5 level 8 genuine force warriors. Some people even have stage 9 genuine force warriors in the Shimen family. The minimum requirement for a feudal lord family was to have a stage 8 genuine force warrior. However, this Shimen family had 4 or 5 stage 8 genuine force warriors. This was enough to establish 4 or 5 feudal lord families. And they even had a stage 9 genuine force warrior. No wonder the Shimen family was so arrogant, and no wonder they were ranked 5th among the 12 great feudal lords. Qin Wushuang secretly smacked his lip. A feudal lord family was already so powerful. Then, how much power would the royal family above the feudal lords and the emperor have? And how powerful would the Zhen Wu holy place be? Qin Wushuang suddenly realized that even if he recovered all of his power from his former world, he would only be at the peak of stage 9 of the genuine force. Most likely, he would not be invincible in the Bayou country. Not to mention, this Bayou country was only a little ordinary country in this big world. When he thought here, a wave of crisis emerged uncontrollably in his heart. Apparently, stage 9 of the genuine force was not the peak of power in this world. Above that, wouldn't it be the upper sky realm? Now, Qin Wushuang was 100% sure that in this world, for sure, there were upper sky realm warriors. Wushuang, what are you thinking about? De Shiming could not help but ask when he saw him lost in his thoughts. Qin Wushuang smiled freely. I am thinking, does your De Shi family not have a backer from above that can suppress the Shimen family? Yes, of course we do. But don't forget, if we have a backer, the Shimen family might also have a backer. After all, they are one level higher than the De Shi family. For sure, their backer would be stronger than the De Shi family. And under normal circumstances, a third party would not get involved in the conflicts between the families in the Bayou country. Unless it's too big of a commotion. Okay. Qin Wushuang nodded thoughtfully. It was good news that a third party would not get involved. Inwardly, he calculated. With his current strength, he could at least tie with a stage 8 genuine force warrior. He would never lose and even have a 60 to 70% chance of winning. As for a stage 9 genuine force warrior, before he mastered the last move of the coagulated sword and the 9 suns palms, he could at most not get killed. It would be impossible for him to win. Unless he mastered the 2 martial arts techniques, he would have a 100% chance of winning against a stage 9 genuine force warrior with his 2 lifetimes worth of combat experience combined with the exquisite qigong from his former world. After all, in his former world, he was invincible under the upper sky realm. In his former world, he could sweep away all his opponent. Big brother De Shi, before the Shimen family urges you to get married, I advise you and my sister to keep a low profile. At least for now, don't disturb the Shimen family. For the safety of his sister, Qin Wushuang also felt that there was no need to anger the Shimen family. Besides, there was still a hidden hand in the dark. Before he took care of it, it would always be a big problem. De Shiming nodded. Of course, even if I don't think for the venerable De Shi family, I must think for your sister. That Shimen family is tyrannical and unreasonable. Once they know about this, it's not impossible for them to make things difficult for your sister. Make things difficult for my sister? Qin Wushuang felt a wave of pride in his chest. Inwardly, he thought, Shimen feudal lords? Ranked 5th among the 12 feudal lords in the country? The second level of the upper-class aristocrats? So what if they had great power? If they talked nicely, they would respect them. If they talked with brute force, Qin Wushuang would not care about them. He would knock them down, of course. His weapon would not be the brick, but his fists. Regardless of whether you were from the royal family or a feudal lord family, Qin Wushuang's principle was simple. He would treat his friends with good wine, and treat his enemies with his fists. So what if you were a feudal lord? So what if you were from the first level of the upper-class aristocrats? Fists were the absolute truth. From an individual to a country, whoever had the harder fists would have more power to speak. Chapter 38. Third update, keep going. It seems that there is no hope for the top 2. There is still a chance for the top 3. If I make it to the top 3, I will do it today. Let's see if everyone's tickets and memberships give me enough clicks. The door was pushed open with a squeak and his father, Qin Lianshan, walked in. Qin Wushuang was sitting cross-legged on the bed. When he saw his father, he got down from the bed with a smile and brought a chair for his father. In these few days, Qin Lianshan had not been living an easy life. Challenging the wealthy Su family had brought him unprecedented pressure. No matter how much they predicted, they always felt that with the humble Qin family's small population, it would be difficult for them to win. Father, there are still a few days until the wealthy class competition. You should rest well and not think too much. You must know that when the boat reaches the bridgehead, everything will be fine. Qin Wushuang could not help but comfort his father when he saw that the corners of his father's eyes were slightly bloodshot. Apparently, he had overworked himself. Wushuang, I think we should give up on this challenge. When Qin Lianshan said these words, his mouth was full of bitterness. For most of his life, he had always wanted to win. Even if there was a mountain of knives, he would never take a step back. Now, when he said these words, he had gone through a lot of suffering. Give up? Father, in the aristocratic world, it is easy to take a step back. However, it is extremely difficult to take another step forward. If we give up now, we will be demoted to commoners. How can we give up? Besides, I can't find any reason to give up. Qin Wushuang was high-spirited and full of vigor. This time, he must let the Qin family return to their position of authority in River County and step back into the mainstream aristocratic circle. Qin Lianshan sighed. Wushuang, I know that you had some fortuitous opportunities, but I still advise you to give up. Do you know why? Why? That wealthy Su family is very good at currying favor. I heard that they have already extended their hands to South Cloud City. They have curried favor with the supreme authority in South Cloud State, the Shi Men feudal lords. Wushuang, you are still young. Even if you had some fortuitous opportunities, it has only been a short time. Why not wait for another 20 years? Father, I only heard that in the water of the river, each new wave surpasses the previous one. This is the trend of the world. Now that the national competition is set, it is the time for the Qin family to show our strength. If he retreated, he would most likely end up in a precipitous cliff or a bottomless abyss. Didn't you hear what Goshing said? He is waiting for the Qin family to lose their aristocratic status, then he will come and hit us when we are down. I believe that within the territory of River County, I am afraid there are more than 1 or 2 families that have such thoughts. It wasn't that Qin Lianshan didn't understand these principles, and it wasn't that he hadn't considered them. However, the Shi Men feudal lords were like a towering mountain. A single finger from them was enough to annihilate any humble family in an instant. Qin Lianshan couldn't help but lose his fighting spirit when he thought about how high and mighty the tycoons were. Father, so what if it's the Shimen feudal lords? Could they be stronger than the Zhen Wu Holy Land? In the Bayou country, as long as the Zhen Wu Holy Place did not declare the extinction of the Qin family, we would have some leeway. Moreover, it was one thing to curry favor with the Shi Men feudal lords, but it was another thing to ask the Shi Men feudal lords to help them. Even if the Shi Men feudal lords were willing to help, would they be able to directly participate? Of course, Qin Wushuang could not say some words too directly at the moment. If it were up to him, so what if it was the Shi Men feudal lords? As long as they became an obstacle to the rise of the Qin family, he would not mind stepping on them. For the family class evaluation, only the direct descendants of the family can participate. Qin Lianshan was clear about this rule. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he asked in a low voice, Wushuang, recently, has Xiu'er been very close to young Master Dashi? Qin Wushuang laughed. Father, it's rare for sister to meet such a young man. You should be happy for her. Qin Lianshan showed a worried expression. Wushuang, after all, you are still young and don't know the depth of the situation. Let's not talk about the disparity between the venerable De Shi family and the humble Qin family. That De Shi Ming already has an engagement, and the person he is marrying is the daughter of the Shi Men feudal lords. This is something everyone in the aristocratic circle in River County knows. If Xiao Er offends the Shi Men feudal lords on this matter, it would be one disaster after another. Qin Wushuang could not help but laugh. Father, it's not even set in stone yet. You are thinking too much. Since we have nothing to do, it's important for us father and son to discuss how to deal with the Su family. As for the Shi Men feudal lords, don't worry too much about them. As long as we can win the wealthy class seats at the martial arts arena, even the Shi Men feudal lords would not be able to turn the tide. The emperor had entrusted the Zhen Wu holy place to grant us the aristocratic seat. What does it have to do with the Shi Men feudal lords? The more relaxed he sounded, the heavier Qin Lianshan's heart became. He felt that his son did not have a clear grasp of the situation and did not recognize the seriousness of the situation. Father, in the battle for the wealthy class seat, I plan to settle it in 3 battles. In the Su family, the strongest should be Patriarch Su Sanli, and then the 2 elders. These 3 are at least stage 4 of the genuine force. As for the others, at most, they are at stage 3. Father, are you interested in a battle? Qin Lianshan said. I have 90% confidence that I can win against those below stage 4. In these past few years, Qin Lianshan had trained his muscles and bones with the classics of tendon changing. His strength had increased by leaps and bounds, and he was no longer the ignorant person he was in the past. Okay, then it's decided. If the other party sends a stage 3 warrior, I will go against them. Above stage 3, I will beat them with my power. This time, we will work together and reshuffle the cards of the aristocratic powerhouses in River County. Qin Lianshan was aware of his son's strength. When he saw his son in high spirits, he felt greatly encouraged. Just as he was about to speak, Qin Xiu's footsteps came from outside the door. Wushuang. Qin Xiu pushed open the door with a face full of smiles. When she saw her father was also there, she called out, Father! Xiu Er, why are you so happy? Qin Xiu's face blushed slightly as she held an invitation in her hand. Father, Wushuang, young Master De Shi just sent us an invitation. He invited us to the De Shi castle as guests. When Qin Wushuang saw the smile on Qin Xiu's face, he guessed that this matter must be related to De Shi Ming. However, he did not expect that the venerable De Shi family would invite the humble Qin family as guests. After Qin Lianshan had read the invitation, his face showed a complicated expression. He felt proud and somewhat worried at the same time. In 3 days, the De Shi family has invited the humble Qin family to celebrate the 20th birthday of the second Missy of the De Shi family. The venerable De Shi family had never invited the humble aristocrats to their banquets. This time, they had invited the humble Qin family. It would be a lie to say that they did not feel honored. Only, it would be difficult for a humble family to come to the banquet of the venerable De Shi family. Father, are we going? Qin Xiu asked worriedly. Qin Lianshan smiled bitterly. It's an invitation from the venerable De Shi family. If we don't go, it would be inappropriate. Then let's go. Qin Wushuang did not have a bad impression of the 2 heirs of the venerable De Shi family. It's easy to go. However, it's difficult to decide what to send. Xiu Er, you are also a girl. What should we send to the second Missy of the De Shi family for her birthday? Father, of course, someone will send a great gift to the Missy of the De Shi family for her birthday. We just need to be polite. We don't need to think too much about it. Qin Wushuang was rather straightforward. It's just that it takes a lot of effort to think about it. Qin Lianshan sighed. Haha, father, if you trust us, then let me and my sister take care of it. Qin Wushuang felt that there was no need to be too deliberate. Right now, the Qin family was only a humble class. As long as they could send a gift that was similar to the humble class, it would be enough if they could show their sincerity and etiquette. If they tried to be too flashy, they would be suspected of flattering others. At this critical moment, it was important to maintain a calm state of mind. Qin Xiu immediately agreed. Wu Shuang, let's go take a look on the street. I know a jewelry store in the county town. The jewelry there is very beautiful. As she spoke, she pulled Qin Wushuang and walked outside. Qin Lianshan looked at his daughter's back. Each of her movements carried the shadow of his late wife. He could not help but feel a pain in his heart. Then, he remembered the matter between Qin Xiu and De Shiming. He gave a low sigh and could not help but worry. Chapter 39. I've made it to the top 3 as I wished. I'll add another update tonight. I hope my brothers will keep up the good work and make it to the top together. The brother and sister walked on the street and went to a few shops. However, they did not find a suitable gift. Qin Xiu raised her head and saw that they were not far from that forever flourishing jewelry store. She immediately called out, Wu Shuang, let's go there and take a look. The forever flourishing jewelry store was the giant of the jewelry industry in River County. It was also the place most favored by the aristocrats of River County. When they walked into the hall, a few shop assistants glanced at these two and sized them up. Then, they all turned around with a smile. Those who were chatting continued to chat, and those who were working continued to work. No one came up to greet them. The forever flourishing jewelry store was supported by the aristocrat. However, it did not mean that any aristocrat family had the ability to spend money here. These shop assistants were experienced in dealing with people. They had their own way of judging people since they had seen a lot of things. When they saw these two dressed like aristocrats from the humble class, their hearts turned cold. How much spending power could an aristocrat from the humble class have? However, Qin Xiu did not pay attention to the disdain in these people's eyes. Although Qin Wushuang saw it in his heart, he did not act out. He knew how realistic this world was. It was not strange for these shop assistants to look down on people. If they took this matter seriously, then they would have nothing to do but get angry. If they wanted to change other people's opinions, they must first change their own status. What made Qin Wushuang depressed was that the jewelry displayed in the hall of this forever flourishing jewelry store had mediocre quality. They could barely handle it if they gave it to an ordinary person. If the Dishi family did not look down on these things, Qin Wushuang would feel embarrassed. He was a bachelor and did not care about it. However, his sister, Qin Xiu, was the most important thing. Girls were easily embarrassed. Wu Shuang, what do you think about this pendant? It's passable. Okay, how about this pair of earrings? Barely passable. This bracelet is not bad. What do you think, Wu Shuang? Mediocre quality. Qin Wushuang had lived 2 lives and experienced a lot. In his previous life, he had seen all kinds of mediocre treasures. He had come and gone from the British Museum as he wished. Of course, he was picky about his taste. In his eyes, these mediocre pieces of jewelry were no different from rubble. Yongxing Jewelry Store is so famous. Is this all you have? Qin Wushuang couldn't help retorting when he saw the group of shop assistants looking at them as if they were looking at a joke. A petite shop assistant walked over with a bitter look on her face, and said in a bitter tone, Of course there are good things, but they are all prepared for the upper-class aristocrats. Even these aren't things that ordinary people can afford. From her tone and expression, it was obvious that she had already classified Qin Wushuang and the others as ordinary people. Qin Xiu didn't take it to heart. She smiled and said, Please show us something better. I'm sorry, but the higher-grade ones are only open to the distinguished families and above. As for you, the shop assistant looked up and down maliciously. Commoners, please forgive us for not receiving you. If you just want to broaden your horizons, please don't use such a clumsy method. You! What makes you think so? Qin Xiu was displeased. Sorry, this is our shop's rule. As far as I'm concerned, I really do think so. The shop assistant's first impression was the strongest. Coupled with Qin Wushuang's previous tone of disdain for these pieces of jewelry, she felt that these two people were simply pretending. You're really unreasonable, Qin Xiu said angrily. I've never seen a business like yours. It's like you're deliberately driving customers away. We naturally welcome customers who can really afford it. I'm only afraid of those who can't afford it, but deliberately dislike this and that. If you can't afford it, just say so. Qin Wushuang laughed leisurely. Sister, do you see? What do you mean by looking down on people? This is reality. After saying this, his expression suddenly changed. He stared at the shop assistant and said indifferently, I don't want to talk nonsense with you. I don't want to cause trouble. Take us to a better display. Before that shop assistant could speak, a cold mocking voice came from outside the door. Qin Wushuang, you only know how to bully girls, right? When Qin Wushuang heard this voice, he could not help but frown. He did not even need to turn his head to know that it was Miss Yun Qinyan from the Yun family, who thought highly of herself. He turned around coldly and indeed, he saw Yun Qinyan standing in the front row with a face full of disdain. Her eyes were full of mockery and disdain, as if seeing Qin Wushuang was the most unlucky thing in the world. Behind Yun Qinyan there were 5 or 6 people, both men and women. Each of them was dressed in a well-dressed aristocratic attire. These people all had different appearances. However, they all had one common trait, and that was, they all had their noses pointed to the sky. It seemed that in River County, it would be a great humiliation to them to look at someone from the same level. When Qin Wushuang saw each and every one of these people's disgusting faces, he felt very unlucky. Inwardly, he wondered if he had not checked the almanac before he left the house. Why did he keep getting into trouble? Qin Wushuang casually glanced at this list of people, and did not bother to pay attention to them. As the reincarnation of a grandmaster of martial arts, it would be boring for him to get entangled with a group of half-grown kids. A black-robed man suddenly opened his mouth and said, Little Sister Qinyan, is it this humble-class kid that has been making you unhappy recently? Yun Qinyan twitched her mouth. Of course it's him. Not only is this guy rude, but he is also full of tricks. Qin Wushuang, let me ask you, last time when the Martial Arts Academy was robbed, was it you who did it? In these past few years, whenever Yun Qinyan thought about that incident, she felt that something was wrong. If it was Su Ting who had done it, what reason did he have to make such a big fuss about it? Especially from Qin Wushuang's words, it seemed that he had already hinted something. It was as if he had already known that there was a ghost in Su Ting's room, and had used his words to trap Su Ting. Earlier, Yun Qinyan had thought that Qin Wushuang, who could not even beat Zhang Xian, did not have the ability to frame Su Ting. However, recently, Qin Wushuang had been in the limelight. He had killed Zhang Xian and his brother, and the humble Qin family had challenged the wealthy Su family. This made her seriously suspicious of Qin Wushuang. Qin Wushuang did not even turn his head. He snorted and mocked. You can't even take care of your own personal belongings, why are you asking me? You can ask the person who found the item. What does it have to do with me? Qingyu, this humble class kid is very rude. The aristocratic circle in River County has a mix of good and bad people. There were 3 men and 3 women in the group. The man who had spoken was dressed in luxurious clothes and had a beautiful jade on his waist. He had the most burly figure and stood in the middle of the other 2 young men. Apparently, he was the leader of this small circle. Senior brother Yifeng, we've made a fool of ourselves. Behind Yun Qinyan, a girl who looked similar to Yun Qinyan but appeared more mature and charming said softly. This girl was dressed in pink and her 2 eyebrows seemed to be able to speak. Between the movements of her eyebrows, it seemed to contain an infinite charm that would make people want to protect her. She was Yun Qingyan's sister, Yun Qingyu. He had to admit that this pair of sisters from the Yun family could be counted as the most beautiful women in River County. However, it was only limited to this. In his former world, Qin Wushuang had seen all kinds of beautiful women on the screen. However, none of them could amaze him. It was not because those beautiful women were not attractive or not beautiful. However, in Qin Wushuang's sense of beauty, they always fell short. Although this pair of sisters before him had a beautiful appearance, they had one thing in common. That was, their eyes carried the kind of Philistine and utilitarian look that often appeared in the aristocratic world. If a girl's eyes were not pure, then in Qin Wushuang's sense of beauty, her beauty would be greatly reduced. Compared to his sister, Qin Xiu, they were worlds apart. Like the limpid autumn water, untainted by even a speck of dust. Only those beautiful eyes could be described as stunning. That young man named Yi Feng shrugged his shoulders confidently. Ridicule? Not to that extent. I, Yi Feng, am not so shallow as to argue with a humble class kid, right? When Yun Qinyan saw that both her sister and brother Yi Feng had spoken up to support her, she became even more courageous. She propped up her small waist and asked with an old-fashioned tone, "Qin Wushuang, are you a man or not? If you are a man, then don't hide it. You dared to do it, yet you don't dare to admit it?" Qin Wushuang frowned. This group of people were more hateful than fleas. When you ignored them, they became even more joyful. You don't want to argue with a humble class kid? Do you think I want to argue with you? Whether I am a man or not, Missy Yun can find a place to verify it. If all you do is talk, then forgive me for not having the time to waste with you. As soon as he said these words, the expression of the Yun sisters changed. Even the other girl who had remained silent looked at Qin Wushuang with surprise. Apparently, they had not expected that a humble class kid would have the guts to say such disrespectful word. The black-robed man who was trying to curry favor with Yun Qinyan flew into a rage. "Brat, it seems like you are tired of living." Qin Wushuang could not help but laugh. He helplessly turned around and asked leisurely, "Why? Don't tell me you want to be a flower protector? But don't you think that this is a little too old-fashioned?" Yun Qingyu, who was behind him, suddenly said, "Ling Tian, don't lower yourself to the level of a humble class kid." The black-robed man was called Ling Tian, and he shouted loudly, "If he offended me, I could just laugh it off. But he has spoken rudely to Missy Qinyan several times, and it is impossible for me to forgive him. Brat, come out and let this young master measure you. I want to see just how much weight you have, to dare to be so arrogant." Qin Xiu felt very sullen. These people were really unreasonable. They were the ones who started the trouble, but they still wanted to make it sound like they were righteous. Qin Wushuang looked at him as though he was looking at an idiot, and said to the shop assistant, "Bring me to a higher grade display." Ignored, he was actually completely ignored by a humble class kid. Ling Tian was completely enraged this time. Chapter 40. Today, a friend joked with me about the two extras you arranged. One of them is called Ling Tian, and the other is called Yi Feng. Those who are familiar with Qidian know that these famous names are the most frequently used names of the main characters in Qidian. Let's use these names of the main characters as extras. If you are always the best male lead, you have to act as a supporting character, right? Let me make it clear that this is not a bad idea, it is purely a joke. Also, it is already 5 o'clock today, but the brothers' firepower seems to have died out. 800 votes a day, this is my goal this week. Can it be achieved? Let's wait and see. Qin Wushuang's attitude not only angered Ling Tian, but also offended the whole group. Yun Qingyu originally had some concerns, but after seeing this situation, she was also annoyed and did not stop him. Yi Feng smiled and said, "Ling Tian, being looked down upon by a commoner, you have never experienced this feeling, right?" Hearing this, Ling Tian was like an ignited firecracker. He immediately became furious and shouted, "Kid, get out here! Qin Wushuang's light voice came from inside. If you want to challenge me, wait here. After I finish shopping, if I am interested, I can consider playing with you kids. Ling Tian? Just because you have such an awesome name, you really think you can bully the heavens and dominate the earth? This time, not only was Ling Tian ignored, even the high and mighty Yi Feng felt a slight sense of humiliation. He was angry and decided to teach this commoner a lesson. Yi Feng was already in his early 20s. Being called a kid by a fresh graduate of the Martial Arts Academy, he did not feel good. Ling Tian yelled again, "Kid, don't leave if you have the guts." Qin Wushuang did not leave. There was a limit to a person's patience. Qin Wushuang was well-mannered, but it did not mean that he could keep a smile on his face like a Buddha. Even a Buddha made of clay would have some temperament. "You really want to fight with me?" Qin Wushuang's tone was cold. His whole body was straight like a spear, with a biting cold aura. "So I have to teach you a lesson." Ling Tian said that he would fight, not bothering about the demeanor of an aristocrat as he sent a fist towards Qin Wushuang's face. What kind of character was Qin Wushuang? Even without Ling Tian's body moving, he could already tell what was going on. His lips curled into a mocking smile, and without even looking at Ling Tian, he dashed to Ling Tian's side in a carefree manner. After missing his target, Ling Tian rushed into the forever flourishing jewelry store. Wherever the wind from his fist reached, the counter was smashed into pieces, making a clattering sound. Ling Tian let out a tiger-like roar and punched out 3 times, aiming for the top, middle, and bottom. The wind from his fists whistled, and it was as though he did not give any face to Ling Tian at all. Gritting his teeth in anger, it was as though he was trying to avenge the death of his father. Qin Wushuang's movement technique was like the wind, like a leaf, lightly flashing a few times. Bang! 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 The wind from his fists was like a whirlwind, and every punch smashed onto the counter. For a moment, the hall was in chaos. Qin Wushuang seemed to be intentionally leading Ling Tian's fists to attack continuously. Every punch seemed to be just a hair's breadth away from hitting Ling Tian, but in the end it was all in vain. Wherever the wind from his fists went, forever flourishing jewelry would sink deeper and deeper into the abyss of disaster. The shadows of his fists flickered and the wind howled. The momentum was astonishing. But, in the end, Ling Tian was about to cry. Looking at the jewelry store in a mess, he also knew that he had made a big mistake. But in the current situation, it was impossible to stop halfway. What made him so angry that he was about to vomit blood was that he could not even touch the corner of his opponent's clothes after such a crazy attack. "Kid, other than running away, don't you have any other skills?" Ling Tian's mind was on the verge of collapse. Qin Wushuang stood leisurely in the middle of the hall and glanced at the devastated jewelry store. Then, he mocked. "So the purpose of you practicing fist techniques was not to beat people, but to cause destruction. How much hatred do you have for forever flourishing jewelry? Why do you have to destroy them?" Qin Wushuang pretended to be calm, but in his heart, he was secretly laughing. This plan of killing 2 birds with 1 stone was really satisfying. Not only could he tease Ling Tian, but he could also use him to crush forever flourishing jewelry's arrogance. Why wouldn't he do it? Seeing that the hall was already smashed beyond recognition, Qin Wushuang said with an apologetic face to the trembling clerk in the corner, "Look, this is the aristocratic family that you admire so much in your heart. We have no enmity with you, but you are already smashing things. Now you know who is good and who is bad, right?" That clerk let out a wah and wailed. Qin Wushuang innocently spread out his hands and said calmly, "Ling Tian, right? After fighting for so long, aren't you tired? Why don't you stop and rest, and properly think about the matters related to compensation?" Yun Qinyan said angrily, "Qin Wushuang, this was caused by the fight between the 2 of you. It's not only Big Brother Ling Tian's fault. You want to shirk responsibility, wishful thinking." Qin Wushuang had an expression of being wronged and cried out, Young Miss Yun, I didn't make a single move from beginning to end. It was always your big brother Ling Tian who trained alone. I really didn't know that he had such great enmity with forever flourishing jewelry. He didn't hold back at all when he made a move. You're quibbling. Quibbling about what? You said you didn't make a move, then what were you doing jumping left and right? Qin Wushuang spoke eloquently and sighed. Your big brother Ling Tian was in such high spirits, demonstrating his supreme fist skill in front of everyone. I couldn't just stand there and be a sandbag for him, right? I did dodge a few times, but that was purely an appropriate action. I just didn't want to be involved in the fight. When he said this, it was equivalent to completely removing himself from the blame. Qin Xiu held back a belly full of laughter, and couldn't help but smile. Only now did she know that her brother was intentionally teasing this group of people, and at the same time, he was also trying to dampen the spirit of forever flourishing jewelry. Yi Feng was the oldest in this group of people, and also the most mature leader. Seeing this situation, he already realized that Qin Wushuang wasn't as simple as he seemed on the surface. He knew that Ling Tian was impatient and had fallen for Yi Feng's trick. He immediately swept his fist around, and seeing that there weren't many precious jewels in the hall that were damaged, he said indifferently, Yi Feng will bear all the losses in the hall. Ling Tian looked at Yi Feng, moved, but received a meaningful gaze in return. He immediately understood and shouted, Qin kid, if you have guts, let's go to a spacious place to fight. Qin Wushuang originally had a smile on his face, but his tone suddenly changed as he said gloomily, looks like you still haven't given up. Don't blame me for not reminding you, before you step onto the arena, you should consider how the two Zhang offspring died. Apparently, this Yi Feng and Ling Tian were not local aristocrats of River County. Qin Wushuang had no interest in where they came from, but before the battle, he might as well give some necessary reminders. After all, it was meaningless to fight over such a trivial matter. However, the other party was determined to fight, and once they stepped onto the arena, they would become Qin Wushuang's enemies. To his enemies, Qin Wushuang would never be courteous. Stop with the nonsense, let's fight to the death. Ling Tian had completely lost his mind due to anger, and he walked outside in a rage. Qin Wushuang mumbled, so ridiculous. We've never kicked open a widow's door, and we've never dug up a dead family's grave, so why do we have to fight to the death? We're all raised by our parents, do each of us not value our own lives? In the spacious area, Qin Wushuang stood in the middle of the arena casually. He completely ignored Ling Tian's ferocious attitude and said casually, okay, here it is. Ling Tian finally found a place to vent his anger. With a loud shout, he jumped up into the air, stretched out his legs, and kicked 9 times in the air. His whole body was like a butterfly spreading its wings as he attacked Qin Wushuang fiercely. These 9 kicks, one from the left and one from the right, came in a chain. His movements were very flashy, and his momentum was astonishing. There was a name for it, it was called the 9-rotation fallen leaf kick. This was Ling Tian's killing move, and it was also one of the most important moves he had learned in his life. Driven by his anger, he had displayed a bit more murderous intent than usual when he performed these 9 kicks. His momentum was even sharper than usual. Yun Qinyan had a look of worship as she clapped her hands, Brother Ling Tian, good leg technique. Qin Wushuang did not move, ignoring Ling Tian's flashy leg technique. He raised his head slightly and pointed a finger in the air. With a chi sound, it shot towards Ling Tian. In his previous life, the Dali imperial family's ancient martial art, the sun-congealing finger. The next moment, Ling Tian, who was still full of himself, felt a piercing pain in his ankle. It was as though a needle had pierced through his entire thigh. Pung! His thigh went numb, and Ling Tian lost his balance. He, who was still confident and carefree a moment ago, fell face first onto the ground, landing in an extremely unbearable posture. Qin Wushuang took a step forward, and stepped on Ling Tian's head, coldly saying, "I don't care where you came from, and I don't care where you were born. Since you want to fight to the death with me, then you must be prepared to die." Just as he was about to step on Ling Tian, Qin Xiu behind him whispered, "Wushuang, don't kill him." Hearing his sister's words, Qin Wushuang was hesitating whether or not he should hold back. Suddenly, there was a gust of wind behind him, and a swift and fierce palm strike came from behind, aiming for a vital part of his body. Qin Wushuang was a martial scholar in his previous life, so naturally he was able to hear everything. Judging by the wind, he knew that it was Yi Feng who had ambushed him. Without turning his head, he rolled up his right sleeve, and as if he had eyes, he struck out with a palm strike, directly hitting where Yi Feng had struck. Boom! As the two palms collided, Qin Wushuang pushed his palm energy, and used the eighth style of the 9 yang palms, desolation burning of the 8 suns. He spat out a hidden force, and the extreme yang flame true qi passed through his palm, directly invading Yi Feng's internal organs. Yi Feng took 3 steps back, and his face suddenly turned pale, then quickly turned red. After this happened 3 times, he finally regained his strength. He looked at Qin Wushuang with eyes full of caution, surprise, and even some undetectable fear. Having lived 2 lives, Qin Wushuang despised vile people who ambushed people from behind the most. Just as he was about to stomp Ling Tian to death. At this moment, a familiar voice came from afar. "Brother Wushuang, please show mercy." From afar, De Shiming, who was dressed in snow-white clothes, was flying towards them. Qin Wushuang gave a light sigh, and in the end, he pulled back his fatal kick. It was not because he did not know how to kill, nor was it because he was afraid of anything. However, since De Shiming had spoken, he had to give him some face. De Shiming's speed was so fast that he arrived in front of them instantly. He glanced at Yi Feng and nodded. Without asking for the reason, he only said lightly, "Brother Wushuang, these are my sister's classmates from the Redwood Martial Arts Academy. They have traveled thousands of miles to attend my sister's birthday party. If they have offended you, please forgive them for my sake. How about it?" Yun Qingyu and Yun Qinyan were stunned. They all knew that Ling Tian was only an offspring of an ordinary wealthy class family from the outer county. However, Yi Feng was an offspring of a venerable family from the South Cloud State City. His status was no less than that of the venerable De Shi family. This was the reason why the sisters had tried to curry favor with him. However, when De Shiming arrived, he had directly asked for a favor from Qin Wushuang. Instantly they were dumbstruck by this scene. Even Yi Feng, who was high up in the air, looked at De Shiming with surprise. He seemed to think that De Shiming had misremembered the difference between their statuses. When De Shiming saw Yi Feng's blaming gaze, he did not care. Instead, he said lightly, "Brother Yi Feng, if you don't want your internal injuries to accumulate and cause your meridians to be blocked and your power to be destroyed, then hurry up and spit out that mouthful of blood in your throat." Initially, Yi Feng had pretended to be calm because he did not want to show his cowardice in front of his friends. However, after De Shiming had exposed him, he could no longer hold his breath. With a crashing sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood. He had held it in for so long in vain. When he spat out this mouthful of blood, not only did the Yun sisters' expression change drastically, even that girl who had come with them looked at Qin Wushuang with a complicated expression. Chapter 41. Yesterday, Li Tian had experienced everyone's firepower. Today, is it still as fierce? When Yi Feng spat out a mouthful of blood, the beautiful faces of the Yun sisters turned pale. Although Yi Feng was only 21 years old, he was already at stage 3 of the genuine force. Among the younger generation, he was already considered to be one of the most outstanding people. Unexpectedly, in this little river county, He had suffered a great loss at the hands of an offspring of the humble class. Fortunately, there were not many people around. Plus, Yi Feng had only exchanged one palm with Qin Wushuang. Unlike Zhang Yao and Zhang Xian, he had not embarrassed himself in front of the entire city. Today's matter ends here. You ladies don't have any objections, right? Although De Shiming seemed to be asking for their opinions, in fact, he had already set the tone. Yun Qingyu stuttered. Young Master De Shi, although Yi Feng had suffered a great loss, he knew how to judge the situation. He knew that today's matter would only harm his reputation. De Shiming's words were exactly what he wanted. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and nodded. Indeed, heroes come from the young. Today I learned that there is always someone better than me. For today's matter, I admit defeat. Let's end it here. However, there is a saying that the mountain does not move and the water moves. I will repay today's matter in the future. Please forgive me, De Shi. De Shiming said lightly. You are all guests in River County. I only care that you guys don't get into trouble here. As for when you are out of River County, you can do whatever you want. Why would I meddle in other people's business? Inwardly, he was biased toward the Qin siblings. However, his tone was neither salty nor light and appeared to be impartial. He also knew that the Yi family was also a venerable family and lived in South Cloud City. Their power was not weaker than the venerable De Shi family. He would not be able to interfere even if he wanted to. Only, with De Shiming's sharp eyes, he saw that Qin Wushuang had not used his full strength when he had attacked Yi Feng. Apparently, he had handled it with ease. Yi Feng was 4 or 5 years older than Qin Wushuang. Today, he had lost to Qin Wushuang. It proved that regardless of strength or potential, he was inferior. How could he be qualified to repay the debt in the future? Of course, De Shiming would not bother to expose such superficial words. However, this Yi Feng was a person who could afford to lose. He could be considered a top character. Yun Qinyan, who had caused the incident, had changed from her previous shrewish and unruly character. Her eyes were a little evasive, like a child who had made a mistake. Qin Wushuang cupped his hands in a salute to De Shiming. Brother De Shi, your family's invitation has made me tired. It's rare for this jewelry store to have such a great reputation, but they actually despise us lower-class nobles for being shabby and unable to afford it. These people were even more baffled. It was as if they had rabies the moment they met. I really regret not checking the almanac before I left. Rabies? What is that? De Shiming was stunned when he heard this new term. Qin Wushuang laughed dryly and said, That is a very strange symptom. Anxiety, violence, madness, the kind that bites whoever it sees. Yi Feng knew these were not good words. His face had turned into the color of a pig's liver. However, as a loser, he did not have the courage to speak. He swallowed back a few of his vicious words. Unable to catch his breath, he choked and coughed continuously. Yun Qinyan hid in the corner and sized Qin Wushuang up with suspicion. She could not understand how Qin Wushuang, who could barely survive in the martial arts academy, had suddenly become a different person. Even big brother Yi Feng, who was at stage 3 of the genuine force, had been beaten to the point of vomiting blood. And the venerable De Shi family, the number 1 family in River County, had also sent an invitation to the humble Qin family. No matter how you looked at it, it seemed absurd for a venerable aristocrat family to invite a humble class to a banquet. Since the situation had developed this way, Qin Wushuang's mood to buy jewelry had completely disappeared. He waved his sleeves freely and smiled at De Shiming. It seems that today is not a good day to go out. I will go back to the inn. Big brother De Shi, we will meet again. Seeing her little brother leaving, Qin Xiu glanced at De Shiming and smiled apologetically. Then, she also followed Qin Wushuang and left. De Shiming was 5 or 6 years older than Yi Feng. Of course, he did not have much in common with them. He said lightly, Little brother Yi Feng, I will ask the witnesses to keep today's battle a secret. As long as you do not leak the details of this battle, I promise that the details of this battle will not be leaked. Yi Feng's handsome face turned red, but he still said, "Thank you for your care, big brother Dashi. I will return to South Cloud City and practice my family's martial arts technique. Please send my apologies to your sister. Later, I will give you a great gift." Dashi Ming gave a light okay. However, he did not care about this matter. He said perfunctorily, "Why don't you go to the banquet? Thank you, big brother Dashi, for asking me to stay. Please send my most sincere apologies to your sister." Yi Feng was proud and arrogant. After this defeat, how could he still have the face to stay? Could it be that he would let a group of his peers ask him and laugh at him? It turned out that Yi Feng, Ling Tian, and Yun Qingyu were all studying at an advanced martial arts academy in the Redwood Royal City. They were also classmates with Dashi Yu, Dashi Ming's little sister. Thus, they had all come to River County to attend Dashi Yu's birthday party. This Yi Feng thought of himself as a playboy and harbored feelings for Dashi Yu. However, he could not help but keep in touch with Yun Qingyu. He enjoyed this ambiguous feeling. This time, he had met Qin Wushuang. Initially, Yi Feng had wanted to use Qin Wushuang to show off his skills and win over Yun Qingyu. Unexpectedly, he had kicked a hard iron board. Dashi Ming could not help but laugh when he saw this group of people leave in a fit of pique. If all the offspring of the venerable Yi family were like Yi Feng, then the venerable Yi family would not be a threat. When he walked into the forever flourishing jewelry store, he only gave a light order, and each of the shop assistants nodded. They indicated that they had not seen anything and would not leak a single word. Dashi Ming waved his hand and left. He had kept the news a secret not because he was considering Yi Feng's reputation, but because he did not want to push Qin Wushuang into the heart of the struggle before the wealthy class competition. After all, there were still some days before the wealthy class competition. Dashi Ming did not want any accidents to happen. Of course, it was easy for the venerable Dashi family to block the news in River County. When the owner of the forever flourishing jewelry store heard the news, he could not help but become furious when he learned the reason. He swore on the spot, "You all don't want to work anymore, right? How many times have I said, don't judge people with your snobbish theories? Those who dare to walk into the forever flourishing jewelry store, who doesn't have some background? You." He pointed to the shop assistant who had greeted Qin Wushuang. "Come with me and kowtow to apologize. Kowtow until the other party forgives you. If they don't forgive you, then kneel and die." To be able to reach his position, everyone was a decisive and ruthless person. When he heard that Dashi Ming had stood up for the humble Qin family, he immediately sensed something different. He entered the inner hall and chose a piece of high-quality jewelry. Then, he took that shop assistant and went to the inn where the Qin family was staying to apologize. Qin Wushuang did not expect that the situation would take such a 180-degree turn. As the saying goes, one does not hit a smiling person. When he saw the respectful face of the owner of the forever flourishing jewelry store, he said lightly, "There is no need to kneel and kowtow. I only wanted to buy a piece of jewelry. Since you are here to deliver it, it saves me the trouble of making a trip. Leave the goods here, and I will pay you the original price." I wouldn't dare. My humble store has already committed a grave sin by causing you to be mistreated. For this piece of jewelry, I only dare to charge you the cost price. Let's just pay 60 gold. The humble Qin family was second to none among the humble class families in River County. They had even surpassed many of the prominent class families. Of course, it would not be a problem for them to pay 60 gold. After he had paid and received the goods, that owner apologized again. Then, he left with a satisfied expression. At this time, that shop assistant was filled with regret. He felt fortunate that Qin Wushuang was magnanimous and did not pursue the matter further. At the same time, he regretted his actions. Why did he have to show such a face? From the way he paid, he did not even put 60 gold in his eyes. Not only had he offended an offspring of an aristocratic family, he had also missed a big order. That was a 1% commission. We welcome all readers to come and read our latest, fastest, and hottest serialized works from Qidian Originals. Chapter 42. I believe everyone can see that the main character's next enemy is not as simple as the wealthy Su family. The real enemy standing in front of Qin Wushuang is the Shi Men feudal lords. Let's see how Qin Wushuang will cross this big mountain. Today, will the recommendation votes reach 800? It's still not enough. Brothers, let's reload. The news of the battle between Yi Feng and Qin Wushuang had been sealed by De Shiming. Within River County, no one had been allowed to know about it. However, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall. Especially to the Zhen Wu holy place, even in the small River County, their information network was extremely thorough. There was almost nothing that they could not penetrate during these 3 days in River County. Guests from all over the country came in an endless stream. Most of them had come for the birthday of the daughter of the venerable De Shi family. Many people had gathered at the east gate of River County. In the past, all the soldiers guarding the city gate had returned to their posts. Outside the city gate, there were more than 30 servants in green standing in an orderly manner. In front of these servants, there were a few nobles leading them. The one leading them was the head of the wealthy Su family, Su Sanli. Su Sanli's gray beard was slightly messy in the wind. However, his feet seemed to have grown roots as he stood motionless and stared anxiously in front of him. He muttered to himself, "It's about time." While he was talking, a few riders appeared from the end of his vision. They were rushing towards the city gate at a fast speed. At first, there were only 2 black dots. However, they gradually approached and arrived in front of him in the blink of an eye. Like a gust of wind, they arrived in front of him in an instant. The rider on the horse suddenly pulled the reins and the horse's head jumped high. Instantly, it stopped in front of Su Sanli. There were 2 people on the horse. One was young and the other was middle-aged. The young man's expression was cold and there was a trace of arrogance in his eyes. He wore a luxurious robe. The middle-aged man had a short stature. However, his eyes were gloomy and looked around like an eagle's eyes. At first glance, one could tell that he was a shrewd and cunning person. Dressed in a green robe, he seemed to be that young man's subordinate. This master and servant were agile and had excellent riding skills. What was even rarer was that one of their horses was black and the other was white. The man was like a dragon, and the horse was like a tiger. The young man who stopped in front of Su Sanli was no more than 30 years old. He had a hooked nose and his eyes were sharp and arrogant. He looked Su Sanli up and down and said, "Thank you, Patriarch Su, for welcoming me personally." The white horse was as white as snow, without a single strand of mixed hair. It did not make any whinny when it came to a sudden stop. It seemed to be well trained. The horse didn't stop until it was close enough. Even after it stopped, he didn't dismount. It was clear that this person was extremely arrogant. The young people of the Su clan behind Su Sanli were all used to this kind of offensive action. They looked at the man in martial robes with eyes that were clearly mixed with envy and jealousy. As the clan leader, Su Sanli also greeted him with a friendly and almost flattering tone. "I've long heard that young Master Shimen is a master in both swordsmanship and horseback riding. Now that I've seen you today, you really live up to your reputation." Patriarch Su is too polite. This is not the place to talk. Let's enter the city. The person called young Master Shimen only answered lightly. In his eyes, the dignified patriarch of the wealthy class Su family was only a wisp of air. "Young Master Shimen, you have traveled a long way. I have already prepared a banquet at the Windy Pool restaurant. I hope to welcome you with a feast. No need, just prepare 2 clean rooms. Don't worry about the rest. I will let you know if I need anything. Okay, then please come to my humble abode, young Master Shimen. Let's go. Young Master Shimen pulled the reins and rushed into the city with his 2 subordinates. Even after they had entered River County, these 2 did not slow down and continued to gallop as fast as before. On the other hand, Su Sanli followed behind them respectfully. He did not even dare to show a strange expression when he saw the actions of young Master Shimen. Instead, he followed behind them with a face full of smiles. One of the offspring of the Su family whispered to his friend, "Indeed, this young Master Shimen is arrogant. However, his riding skills are indeed good. Arrogant people have the right to be arrogant. I am afraid that we, the offspring of the wealthy class, will not be able to match his achievements even if we live our entire lives." That's right. Offspring of the feudal lords like him were born to be favored by the gods. Judging from his young age, I am afraid his strength is not much lower than the patriarch's, right? Pa. Just as these 2 had finished whispering, they received 2 solid slaps on their faces. However, since there were many people in this group, the sound of the slaps was not obvious. They had clearly controlled their strength. The middle-aged man in front of these 2 turned around and scolded lightly. "You 2 bastards, shut up! You cannot talk behind the backs of the offspring of the feudal lords. He is a stage 6 warrior of the genuine force, and his hearing is not something you 2 bastards can understand. If you don't want to die, then shut your mouth." Stage 6 of the genuine force? Uncle Sihai, you said he is already at stage 6? Impossible, the patriarch is over 60 years old this year, right? Isn't he only at stage 5? One of the offspring who had been hit covered his burning face and said in disbelief. Don't doubt me, you guys don't know the height of the sky and the depth of the earth. And let me tell you, stage 6 of the genuine force will only be higher. How could the number 1 warrior of the young generation of the Shi-men be undeserving of his reputation? Or else, he would not be worthy of the title of one of the 4 scarlet talents. One of the 4 scarlet talents? The other offspring who had been hit was also stunned. He counted with his fingers and finally understood the difference between them. In this little river county, they could not even enter the ranks of the 7 young masters of River County. However, this young master Shi-men had already entered the ranks of the 4 scarlet talents. What did that mean? In the entire Prince Akaji, the 4 most outstanding young people were known as the 4 scarlet talents. And Prince Akaji had 8 states under him. Each state governed 8 counties. In other words, compared to Prince Akaji, River County was 2 administrative levels lower. The difference between them was like heaven and earth. Oh my God! It seems that in my lifetime, I have no hope of catching up to his achievements. After understanding the difference between them, these 2 offspring howled in a low voice and did not dare to speak another word. Young Master Shi-men, who was at the front of the team, heard his subordinate's internal chi voice. It seems that not everyone in the wealthy Su family is a frog at the bottom of the well. There are still some smart people. Most of the lower aristocrats like this are like this. The Su family is not the only one. In fact, they're just clowns. If it wasn't for the fact that it involves Sister Yuju's marriage, I wouldn't be willing to waste my time in such a small county. After he had finished speaking, young Master Shi-men squeezed the horse's belly and sped up. However, it caused a small commotion among the welcoming team of the Su family. Those juniors who were not skilled in martial arts could only run forward to prevent themselves from being shaken off by the team. In River County, the Su family was one of the 3 wealthy classes. Naturally, the Su family, who had established their family through martial arts, could not compare to the Qian family, which was also a wealthy class. However, the Qian family had spread their shops all over the South Cloud State. Even so, the Sioux family's mansion still occupied a few dozen acres of land. At this time, the wealthy Sioux family mansion was brightly lit. Everywhere, there were lanterns and colored banners. It seemed that something big was going on. However, everyone in the Sioux family mansion knew that all of this was for the VIP guest in the East Wing. The fifth of the 12 great feudal lords, in Bayou Country, the #1 warrior among the younger generation of the Shimen feudal lords in South Cloud State, Shimen Chien. Inside the East Wing, Su Sanli stood respectfully. He did not dare to move as he looked at the young man holding the book. As for the short man behind the young man, he seemed to have blended into the shadows. If Su Sanli had not seen this person standing in front of him, he would not have sensed the slightest trace of this person's presence. Indeed, the 13 Shimen eagles live up to their reputation. Su Sanli glanced at the short man who had almost disappeared into the darkness. He could not help but break out in a cold sweat. The 13 eagles of Shimen were at least in the 5th level of the true martial realm. They were recruited by the Shimen feudal lords, and all of them had numbers instead of names. They had always been people who walked on the dark side. For several years, they had eradicated many hostile forces for the Shimen family. And Su Sanli knew that the person in front of him was the famous cold-blooded 11, who was known for his cold-blooded cruelty. This mystic shadow fist is quite interesting. Whether it's the fist technique or the way of inner strength, it has a unique understanding. Although there are some flaws, the unconventional fist technique is still quite threatening. It seems that your Su family has produced quite a few people. Right now, Shimen Qian was holding the bewildering shadow fist that had been passed down from generation to generation in the Su family. One of the ancestors of the Su family had obtained this book by accident. Because of this book, the Su family had established their wealthy class status in River County. However, Shimen Qian's actions made Su Sanli break out in a cold sweat. It was because after Shimen Qian had come to the Su family, he had not attended any banquets or received any guests. He only asked Su Sanli to take out the secret book and read it to pass the time. Although this kind of entertainment made Su Sanli uncomfortable, the person in front of him was someone he could not afford to offend. Not to mention these martial arts manuals that were basically unworthy of the other party's discerning eyes. Even if all the maidens of the Su family were to accompany this young master, Su Sanli would not dare to have the slightest hesitation. Although these martial arts secret books were the most confidential secrets in the family, the Shimen feudal lords were rich and overbearing. They had so many secret books of this level that they could use them as toilet paper. Most likely, they would not be so despicable as to covet a secret book passed down from the wealthy class. After flipping through the last page of the bewildering shadow fist, Shimen Qian was still expressionless. This made Su Sanli feel somewhat at a loss. Do you know that De Shi Ming from the venerable De Shi family? Finally, he spoke. When Su Sanli heard this question, his heart suddenly moved. He remembered that the De Shi family had repeatedly stood behind the Qin family to embarrass him. Thinking about the background of Shimen Qian's visit, he had an idea of what to say. After all, to become the patriarch of a wealthy class family, besides having excellent martial arts skills, the most important thing was that he was extremely scheming. Young Master Shimen, I know De Shi Ming. At the moment, Su Sanli could not guess Shimen Qian's intentions. Of course, he answered carefully as he was afraid that he would attract trouble if he said something wrong. Tell me. Shimen Qian's tone was light and unfathomable. De Shi Ming is the eldest son of De Shi Heng, the patriarch of the venerable De Shi family in River County. I heard that he had been obsessed with martial arts since he was a child, and was highly valued by De Shi Heng. Before he was 25 years old, he had already reached stage 5 of the genuine force. He is also known as the head of the 7 young masters of River County. Su Sanli's answer was still impenetrable. The things he had mentioned were all information that everyone knew. As for his personal opinion, he still did not mention a word. What is his reputation in the county? Shimen Qian casually threw the bewildering Shadow Fist book onto the tea table. His tone was slightly more tense than before. It is not my place to comment on the son of a venerable family. Su Sanli was an experienced and astute person. He was an expert at observing people's body language. From Shimen Qian's small movements and subtle changes in his expression, he had vaguely grasped something. However, he was not in a hurry to reveal his card. You can speak freely in front of me. He is only a son of a venerable family. Inwardly, Shimen Qian laughed at this cunning Su Sanli. He had a stomach full of opinions, yet he was playing hard to get? Since young Master Shimen has spoken, then I will speak frankly. Initially, this kid had a good reputation. In fact, he was the leader of the younger generation in River County. Only, in recent months, I heard that he had fallen in love with a girl from the humble class. He had not returned home for a few months and had been wandering between that girl's residence and the restaurant. Gradually, he had become the laughingstock of the city. Humph, in the end, he is still a son of a venerable family who has never seen the world. He is rude and rude. The Shimen family has already thought highly of him. Unexpectedly, this kid does not know how to respect himself. Apparently, this Shimen family had already heard about everything that had happened in River County. He had only asked Su Sanli indirectly to confirm his suspicions. When he saw Shimen Qian's handsome face had become extremely ferocious in that instant, Su Sanli knew that he had made the right bet. He had already heard about the engagement between de Shiming and the Shimen family. Now, when he saw Shimen Qian's expression, Su Sanli immediately guessed the purpose of Shimen Qian's trip. He only needed to make Shimen Qian feel dissatisfied with de Shiming, or even hostile. Then, this move of using the tiger to swallow the wolf would almost succeed. Not only would he be able to stabilize his position as a venerable class, but he would also be very happy if he could use this opportunity to strike a blow to the venerable de Shi family. He could even shift the position of the venerable de Shi family that had always suppressed the Su family. If everything went smoothly, it would not be a dream for the Su family to sit on the venerable class seat and become the leader of River County. Everything would depend on how he was going to add fuel to the fire. Regardless, if he could lure the Shimen feudal lords to deal with the venerable de Shi family, the Su family would not lose a single hair. Coincidentally, Su Sanli was an expert at this kind of business without risking anything. What is the background of that humble class girl? Shimen Qian asked after a moment of silence. She is the daughter of the Qin family from Eastwood Town, Qin Xiu. Humble Qin family, Qin Xiu. Shimen Qian glanced at Su Sanli meaningfully. Suddenly, he said, I heard that during this family class evaluation, your Su family was challenged by a humble class? Su Sanli broke out in a cold sweat. Inwardly, he knew that things were not going well. Could it be that his plan of using someone else's knife to kill had been seen through? Before he could answer, Shimen Qian waved his hand. You can leave now. When Su Sanli heard these words, he immediately left. His back was drenched in cold sweat. He did not even dare to look back and left with lingering fear. Chapter 43. P.S. Today, I've decided to work hard and rush for the first 3 chapters. 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and 1 in the evening. I only ask for the members' clicks and recommendation ticket. Now, the recommendation tickets are somewhat tragic. The ratio of clicks and recommendations has fallen to 40:1. Haha. It's alright, the heavens reward the diligent. If I work hard to write, my brothers will surely fire at me. Inside the castle of the de Shi family, a secret report had already been sent to the Patriarch, de Shi Heng. Mr. Patriarch, I have reliable news. Shimen Qian, the first young master of the Shi-Men feudal lords, has arrived today. He is staying at the wealthy Su Manor. His intentions are unknown. De Shi-Hung had always been a steady person. He was known for his ability to remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. When he heard this report, although he was surprised inwardly, he remained calm and nodded lightly. Okay, keep investigating. After the spy had left, De Shi-Hung ordered, "Ask Ming Heir and Yang Heir to find me in the garden." De Shi-Ming and De Shi-Yang were brothers from the same father and mother. They were also the only two sons of the patriarch. The eldest son, De Shi-Ming, was 27 years old. He had a carefree and unrestrained personality. The second son, De Shi-Yang, had a calm personality. He did not show his emotions on his face. Although he was only 16 years old, he had taken after his father. Between the two sons, they had a daughter named De Shi-Yu. She was in her 20s and was about to celebrate her birthday at the family's castle. When the two brothers received the notice, they immediately went to the garden. When they arrived at the entrance of the garden, they saw their father, De Shi-Heng's figure moving back and forth. Like a dancing dragon, he was practicing one of the family's martial arts techniques. This martial arts technique was the secret technique of the De Shi family. It was called the Wind and Thunder technique. It had the power to swallow the mountains and rivers and was extremely tyrannical. When De Shi-Hung performed it, its power was even more shocking. Wherever the wind from his palms went, the grass was destroyed, the tree trunk bent, the leaves fell, and the petals danced in the air. After he had finished practicing a set of martial arts techniques, De Shi-Hung withdrew his qi and stood with his hands behind his back. Without turning his head, he said lightly, "Ming Heir, Yang Heir, tell me, after watching for so long, what have you learned?" De Shi-Ming was the eldest son, of course, he should answer first. Looking at father's martial technique, it's abnormally ferocious. It has the aura of swallowing mountains and rivers, and the momentum of a fist sweeping through wind and thunder. If it weren't for father's cultivation of the 7th level of the true martial realm, it would be extremely difficult to have such a scene. What he had said was purely about martial arts. De Shi-Hung nodded lightly and said, "Yes, Ming Heir, you are passionate about martial arts. It is reasonable for you to have such understanding. But you have to know that the power of man is limited, while the invisible power of heaven and earth is boundless. Knowing how to use the power of heaven and earth is the pinnacle of martial art. Where is Yang Heir?" However, De Shi-Yang's personality was much more stable than his brother's. He had more time to think. Yet, he was thinking from a perspective other than martial arts. The child saw that his father's fists were mighty and powerful, like the roaring waves and surging tides. The flowers, plants, and trees around father were all destroyed. Only the few willows in the corner of the courtyard, which looked weak, were not damaged at all. Compared to the big trees that were broken by strong winds, these willows went with the flow. No matter how they swayed, they always followed the wind and were very resilient. This seems to be related to the way of life. This answer was more in line with De Shi-Heng's thoughts than his brother's. He laughed and nodded. The taller trees in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. These seemingly weak willows could follow the wind and remain standing. If these willows were like this, how could a family not follow the general trend if they want to remain standing? General trend? De Shi-Ming silently repeated this word in his mind. Instantly, he understood his father's implied meaning. Could it be that his marriage this time was the so-called general trend? De Shi-Ming was also a smart person. He knew that his father was hinting that he should follow the general trend and not get involved with Qin Xiu. However, when he thought of this, his heart felt as if it was being cut by a knife. No one knew a son better than his father. De Shi-Hung knew that his eldest son was an emotional person. It would not be easy to change his personality. Thus, he had never ordered De Shi-Ming to submit. Now, when he saw that he was silent, he only said lightly, Our spies reported that Shi Men Qian, the #1 descendant of the Shi Men family, the #1 of the young generation in South Cloud State, and one of the 4 Scarlet Warriors, had arrived at River County with his subordinates. They are staying at the wealthy Su family mansion. Regarding the marriage forced by the Shi Men feudal lords, De Shi Heng's anger was no less than anyone else's. Of course, he also understood De Shi Ming's pain and frustration. However, to the venerable De Shi family, each and every move of the Shi Men feudal lords was the general trend. Since the venerable De Shi family did not have the strength to go against the trend, they could only go with the flow. Shi Men Qian? A trace of anger emerged on De Shi Ming's handsome face. His brain buzzed as if it had been struck by a giant thunder. This was a name that he could not let go of. Shi Men Qian, one of the 4 Scarlet Warriors. He had provided the Redwood King with a plan to defeat 10,000 northern barbarians. He was the #1 among the young generation of the Shi Men feudal lords. He was the chosen heir of the Shi Men feudal lords. He had even received an audience with the emperor. Compared to De Shi Ming, the leader of the 7 young masters of River County, all the achievements of the seemingly young and promising De Shi Ming were not worth mentioning. Every time De Shi Ming thought of the time when he was young and impetuous, he had sparred with Shi Men Qian at the birthday celebration of the Redwood King. In the end, he had been defeated by Shi Men Qian in one move. His heart was filled with unyielding and resentment. This knot in his heart had always been the biggest obstacle for De Shi Ming to reach a higher level of martial arts. However, to De Shi Ming, Shi Men Qian's other identity was even more fatal. He was Shi Men Yan's twin brother. For your information, the first time Shi Men Qian had killed someone, it was for his little sister. It was apparent how close these siblings were. Facing Shi Men Qian, for the first time in his life, De Shi Ming felt a sense of defeat. It is indeed Shi Men Qian. De Shi Heng repeated with certainty. Father. De Shi Ming suddenly raised his head. What do you want me to do by telling me these things? As long as your surname is De Shi, you must put the De Shi family's interests first. Then should we cancel the humble Qin family's invitation? De Shi Ming asked in a low voice. No, maintain the original plan. Hearing his father's instructions, De Shi Ming's hanging heart finally calmed down. If his father had said the word cancel, De Shi Ming would immediately carry out his fake death escape plan without hesitation. He could not do anything by himself. He could only use this method to escape from the marriage. Indeed, De Shi Yu's 20th birthday had made River County much livelier than usual. Many unfamiliar faces had appeared. Each of these people were well dressed and had apparently come from other places to attend De Shi Yu's birthday party. Qin Wushuang did not want to attend the party since it was not a good one. However, he could not resist his sister's eagerness. Besides, he also wanted to see what a venerable family was like. In the afternoon, the 3 of them departed from the inn. In a moment, they had arrived outside the De Shi family's private castle located in the core area of River County. After handing over the invitation, the 3 of them easily passed through the door. A servant led the 3 of them into the castle. After a few steps, Qin Xiu saw De Shi Ming walking over from the opposite side. Patriarch Qin, Missy Qin, and Brother Wushuang, you are here. Qin Wushuang laughed inwardly. He thought that it was inappropriate for De Shi Ming to call her Little Xiu in front of his father. Immediately, he laughed. Big Brother De Shi, you must be busy today? Chapter 44. Second update. Brothers, if you work harder, I am number 2 on the newcomer list. Can you get me number 1 on the newcomer list before the full moon? There is still some gap. But as long as you are willing to work harder and I am willing to explode, there will always be hope. Let's prepare and explode again tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. In such an occasion, the identity of the humble class aristocrats appeared to stand out. Under the gaze of these hundreds of eyes, the Qin family did not look like they had come to attend a banquet. Instead, they looked like monsters that were surrounded by a group of bored people. Although Qin Wushuang was thick-skinned, anyone would feel uncomfortable in such a situation. De Shi Ming was an understanding person as he called out, "I will take you three to see my father." While they were talking, another figure walked out from the hall. He immediately saw the three people from the Qin family. He greeted them with a smile. "You are here." It was De Shi Ming's younger brother, De Shi Yang. He had an unspoken friendship with Qin Wushuang. "Third brother, you have come at the right time. I will take the Qin family to see my father. You take care of the guests outside." De Shi Yang nodded and walked over. He extended his hand to shake Qin Wushuang's hand and smiled. At the same time, he remembered the conversation they had at the city gate 3 years ago. Qin Wushuang had promised De Shi Yang that he would come back for sure. Now, he had not let him down and had finally come. "Father, sister, you guys go with big brother De Shi. I will not go." De Shi Ming was stunned. Then, he felt it was reasonable. Although his father was not a strong person, his power as the head of the family would most likely clash with Qin Wushuang's strong temperament. It would be best if these two people did not meet. De Shi Yang talked with Qin Wushuang for a while. Since he had to take care of the guests, he did not stay for long. Qin Wushuang watched De Shi Yang walk out and felt even more relaxed. Since he was extremely bored, he found a corner and sat down lazily. Then, he coldly observed the groups of aristocrats. Besides the aristocratic powerhouses in River County, Qin Wushuang did not care about the other aristocratic powerhouses. And in the aristocratic circle of River County, there had always been a set of social standards. For someone like Qin Wushuang who came from a humble background, let alone being able to blend in, even if he could thicken his skin and blend in, Qin Wushuang would not ask for a snub. Based on the standards of these nobles, the commoner nobles had always been the object of their superiority. Whether it was the wealthy Su clan, the Yun clan, or the prominent Zhang clan, all of them were like this. Those gathered in the small square were mostly young disciples. Qin Wushuang naturally knew the people from the wealthy Su family. He was no stranger to Su Yuan and Su Ting. It was just that today, these two were following behind a young man in yellow robes who was about 25 or 26 years old. This yellow-robed young master was the most outstanding young man of the wealthy Su family, and his name was Su Zhou. Although they were both among the 7 young masters of River County, this Su Zhou ranked much higher than Su Yuan. He was ranked 3rd and was only behind De Shi Ming and another De Shi offspring. Among the 7 young masters of River Luo, the Su family had taken 2 seats and were only second to the venerable De Shi family's 3 seats. This achievement had also surpassed the wealthy Yun and wealthy Qian families. Thus, when this Su Zhou stood in the center, the aristocratic circle of River County consciously surrounded him and listened to him talk. Su Zhou had always been active in South Cloud City. This time, he had rushed back to attend the family class evaluation because he had received a letter from his family. Since it happened to be Missy De Shi's birthday celebration, he had brought his 2 younger brothers to attend. Ever since the Qin family had appeared in his line of sight, Su Zhou's gaze had never moved. "Big brother Su, this humble Qin family has indeed curried favor with the venerable De Shi family," one of the aristocratic offspring said with a face full of righteous indignation. Su Zhou's face darkened slightly. "So what if they have curried favor with the venerable De Shi family? Second brother, is this the kid who had instantly killed Zhang Yao? That battle at the river square was the biggest shame in Su Yuan's life." When he heard his big brother Su Zhou ask about it, he felt ashamed and nodded with shame. "Big brother, it is this kid from the humble class. He is just a martial arts student who is still wet behind the ears. How could he have such skills? Apparently, a level 7 martial arts student had instantly killed a warrior at the peak of the power force. This matter had surpassed his acceptable range. Just as he was thinking of finding a reason to probe Qin Wushuang's background, suddenly, he saw De Shiyang leading a group of guests inside. When Qin Wushuang saw this group of guests, the smile on his face instantly disappeared. Among the 5 people, except for the 2 older ones, the other 3 were the ones he had met at Yongxing jewelry store that day. The Yun sisters, as well as their mysterious female companion, were all present. However, those 3 men were nowhere to be seen. Qin Wushuang was not surprised. After that battle, it would be strange if that Yi Feng and Ling Tian had the face to stay. When enemies meet, their eyes would turn red. As soon as Yun Qinyan walked in, she saw Qin Wushuang in the corner. She turned around and whispered a few words to that family elder. That elder revealed a thoughtful expression. He glanced at Qin Wushuang with a complicated gaze. Qin Wushuang did not want to cause trouble in this situation. He sneered and turned around to leave. De Shiyang said in a clear voice, "Everyone, the guests are all here. Please enter the main hall to watch the ceremony." When the group of people received the notice, they all entered in a line. Qin Wushuang walked in first and bumped into his sister, Qin Xiu, who was walking out from the side with a heavy heart. When she saw Qin Wushuang, Qin Xiu's helpless eyes seemed to have found someone to rely on. "Sister." When Qin Wushuang saw his sister's gloomy expression, he guessed something. He whispered, "Patriarch De Shi, did he say something?" He didn't say anything." Qin Wushuang sighed. "Sister, you haven't even learned how to lie. Tell me, what did he say?" "He didn't say much and was very polite to us. He only told me that big brother De Shi was engaged." Qin Xiu's eyes were red and she was about to cry. The same thing, when spoken by De Shi Ming and Patriarch De Shi Heng, had completely different meanings. "Sister." Just when Qin Wushuang wanted to comfort her, an unfriendly greeting came from behind. "Qin Wushuang." In this kind of formal situation, aristocrats rarely called each other by their full names. Even if it was a fake greeting, they still needed to follow some etiquette and add "young master" or something. In the aristocratic circle, to call someone by their full name in a formal situation, it represented contempt and humiliation. Qin Wushuang was not a person who liked to pay attention to fake greetings. If it were any other time, even if it was a formal occasion, he would just laugh it off. However, right now, he was in a bad mood because of his sister. He turned around and saw Yun Qinyan standing behind him with a sad face. Ever since the fight in front of the jewelry store, Yun Qinyan had completely stopped looking down on Qin Wushuang. However, Yun Qinyan, who was used to being arrogant, could not let go of her superiority as a member of the wealthy class, not to mention reigning in her princess temper. This time, she did not have any evil intentions. However, when she called him by his full name, it just so happened that Qin Wushuang was in a bad mood. Naturally, the atmosphere changed. "What's the matter?" Qin Wushuang stared at her indifferently. When Yun Qinyan saw Qin Wushuang's unapproachable expression, the words of apology she had prepared for a long time instantly vanished into thin air. The eldest Missy's brute force flared up as she said angrily, "It's okay. If there's nothing, go away." Qin Wushuang really did not want to experience this princess temper. He also did not have the mood to think about what Yun Qinyan wanted to say. He turned around and was about to leave. "Qin Wushuang, don't go," Yun Qinyan anxiously said. "Miss Yun, if you have something to say, then say it. If you have nothing to do, then find something to do. There are many noble young masters here, and many of them have fantasies about you. Don't you have other interests and hobbies besides finding trouble with me?" I'm not looking for trouble with you." Yun Qinyan stamped her feet, stared at Qin Wushuang, and whispered in her throat, "That day's matter, it was my fault." "What?" Qin Wushuang's hearing was very good, so he heard it clearly. But when he saw that this princess was clearly apologizing, but was so stiff, he could not help but find it ridiculous. He deliberately teased her and asked, "Qin Wushuang, don't go too far. Today, I just want to apologize to you." Qin Wushuang breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that if you don't look for trouble, then everything will be fine. "Which matter are you referring to?" "Everything." Yun Qinyan was embarrassed and anxious. She had always been proud, and this was the first time in her life that she had lowered herself to apologize to someone. Half of the reason was because of the pressure from her family's elders. Oh, then what is there to apologize for? Anyway, those who provoked me have already paid the price. Miss Yun, you are high and mighty, so naturally you won't want to associate with a commoner like me. And I also don't have any plans to curry favor with the wealthy Yun family. There's no need to apologize. If you want to know the truth about the theft, I don't mind telling you that the whole story was Su Ting's doing. It's just that he shot himself in the foot. After saying all this, Qin Wushuang did not care about Yun Qingyan's expression or feelings. He pulled his sister and turned to leave, leaving behind Yun Qingyan, who was like a stone statue. Chapter 45. Finally, I've spelled it out. Brothers, concentrate your firepower and fire at me, haha. Walking in the spacious hall, Qin Wushuang felt that this trip was really boring. It was not because of Yun Qingyan's appearance that made him feel this way. It was because this hall was filled with all kinds of aristocratic children. However, almost all of them were 1 in 1,000. Each of them spared no effort to show their shallowness and boredom. Those with high status were arrogant and showed off their arrogance. Those with low status were humble and self-deprecating. Regardless of their words or actions, all of them were filled with boring comparisons and showed their ridiculous sense of superiority. At this time, De Shiming walked out in a hurry. When he saw that Qin Wushuang and his sister were still there, the worry on his face eased a little. He walked over and said, "Little brother Wushuang." Behind De Shiming, a large group of young people walked out. They surrounded a young girl who was 1 or 2 years younger than Qin Xiu. She looked similar to the De Shi brothers and had a heroic spirit. She was the main character of today's banquet, Miss De Shiyu. "Little brother Wushuang, Miss Xiu, this is my little sister, De Shiyu. Second sister, these are the Qin siblings from Eastwood Town." De Shiyu nodded enthusiastically and smiled. "Thank you for coming to support me, please sit." At the same time, she deliberately looked at Qin Wushuang and added, "My big brother and third brother both praised you endlessly. I didn't expect you to be so young." De Shiyu was not as pretentious as other rich young ladies. On the contrary, she had some heroic spirit. It was rare to find this kind of heroine temperament in an ordinary girl. "Miss De Shi, you are too polite," Qin Wushuang answered casually. The group of young people behind De Shiyu were all her classmates and friends at the Redwood Martial Arts Academy. Each of them came from an extraordinary background. At least, they were the offspring of the wealthy class, and some of them even came from venerable families. They were all surprised when they saw the De Shi siblings being so polite to a young man dressed in humble class clothing. Some of the offspring of the wealthy class felt even more jealous. Usually, they had tried to please De Shiyu in every possible way, but they had never seen her being so polite. Why was this kid from the humble class treated so well? "Ha ha, Missy you, are these 2 humble class offspring from River County?" One of the aristocratic offspring approached her with a mischievous smile and asked with a mocking tone. De Shiyu glanced at Qin Wushuang apologetically and turned her head to say, "Du Xiang, you should go drink more and ask less questions." Initially, that Du Xiang had only wanted to use this opportunity to flirt with De Shiyu. However, he did not expect to be snubbed. He felt extremely gloomy and glared at Qin Wushuang. His mouth moved, but he could not say anything. De Shiming also felt helpless. Young people these days were really too energetic. Each of them looked like they were looking for trouble anytime, anywhere. Suddenly, he said, "Oh right, second sister, you have two classmates. One is called Yi Feng and the other is called Ling Tian. Due to some urgent matters, they have already left River County. They asked me to tell you that in the future they will make up for it with a great gift." In fact, Dashiyu already knew about this matter. When she heard her brother mention it again, she immediately understood his intentions. Her brother was hinting to her to not let her classmates cause any more trouble. Otherwise, they would only be humiliating themselves. Yi Feng and Ling Tian were the best examples. When they heard that Yi Feng had left on his own, this group of Redwood Martial Arts Academy students immediately started to discuss among themselves. Yi Feng went back? This guy really doesn't have any sense of loyalty. Isn't that right? Everyone came together. How could he leave on his own? Could it be that the family class evaluation requires them to go back and help? Impossible. The venerable Yi family and the wealthy Ling family are both very stable in their own territories. They were not challenged. Besides, their families are all very powerful and full of talented people. Why would they need these young people to go back and help? Then they have no reason to leave halfway. Dashi Ming smiled lightly. Missy Yun should know the exact reason. If you guys want to know, you can ask Missy Yun in private. Yun Qingyu had been silent the entire time. Under everyone's gaze, she stuttered. There is more to this matter. When we return to the Redwood Martial Arts Academy, you guys can ask them in person. Ling Tian was not a big deal. However, Yi Feng was an offspring of the venerable family, an upper-level aristocrat. Yun Qingyu would not dare to reveal the humiliating defeat he had suffered at the hands of a humble class offspring. Of course, Qin Wushuang would not show off. To the Yun sisters, defeating Yi Feng was an incredible matter. However, to Qin Wushuang, he did not care about it at all. As he walked away with a smile, Dashi Ming suddenly whispered to Qin Xiu, "Little Xiu, I will take you to see my grandmother." Qin Xiu raised her head in surprise. She saw Dashi Ming say meaningfully, "In the entire venerable Dashi family, if there is one person that even my father has to listen to, it would be my grandmother." Qin Wushuang laughed inwardly, but he did not expose them. He smiled and said, "You guys do your thing, I will just walk around the hall." Qin Xiu glanced at Qin Wushuang with a troubled expression. After she received her little brother's affirmation, she felt more confident. She followed De Shiming. That Du Xiang had been scolded by De Shiyu earlier, and he was not in a good mood. He recalled how De Shiyu had been so polite to an offspring of the humble class. In comparison, as an offspring of the wealthy class, he had received such a different treatment. The more he thought about it, the more irritated he became. He asked around in private and immediately found out the inside story. When he learned that this son of the Qin family had gotten the opportunity to attend the banquet because of his sister and De Shiming's relationship, he felt even more unbalanced. He glared at Qin Wushuang many times with hatred. However, he did not expect that the other party would not even look at him. It was not easy for her to notice his attention, but her eyes indifferently wandered away. She actually ignored him. This had triggered Du Xiang's wealthy class pride. He twitched the corner of his mouth and walked in front of Qin Wushuang with a face full of ridicule and displeasure. He almost wrote the words, "looking for trouble," on his face. "Offspring of the humble class, don't you think you are standing out here?" Qin Wushuang snorted and glanced at him casually. Then, he looked away and continued to observe the people in the hall. He did not even know this Du Xiang in front of him. Of course, there was no need for him to pretend to be polite. Even if you don't feel embarrassed, I feel embarrassed for the venerable De Shi family. A child of the humble class has appeared at the upper-class aristocratic De Shi family's banquet. Don't you know that all the guests here are ashamed to be with you? Du Xiang was filled with righteous indignation. He spared no effort to express his wealthy class superiority. He only wanted to find a stool and step on it. Then, he would use the geographical height to teach Qin Wushuang a lesson. By the way, am I familiar with you? Qin Wushuang was stunned. He did not know this person in front of him. However, he was not unfamiliar with this kind of face. During this period of time, he had met many of this kind of people among the aristocrat. You don't need to be familiar with me. You only need to know that I am only stating a fact. Du Xiang paused for a moment and added with a self-satisfied tone, You are also not qualified to be familiar with me. Qin Wushuang's eyelashes did not move as he said lightly, Yes, you are indeed stating a fact. On the topic of being ashamed to be with you, you have said exactly what I wanted to say. Do you have anything else? If you don't, please don't rape my eyes and ears, okay? Is that so? Du Xiang asked back mockingly, Here, who does not have a higher status than you? Do you think you are qualified to look down on everyone? What right do you have to be ashamed to be with everyone? To me, it is a great shame to talk to an idiot. I hope you will not make my shame worse. Otherwise, the consequences will be severe. After he had finished speaking, he rolled his eyes and walked away. If they were not at the De Shi family's banquet, Qin Wushuang would have already slapped him until he could not take care of himself. How would he have the time to talk to him? You stop right there. Du Xiang was completely furious. He said with a strong sense of righteousness, I will give you two choices. 1. Apologize to me immediately. 2. Disappear from this banquet. Qin Wushuang leisurely stopped and said with emotion, I originally thought that there would be a limit to a person's stupidity. I didn't expect that I would not see this limit in you. Alright, what exactly do you want? Tell me your intentions. If it is because Miss De Shi had scolded you, and you are holding a grudge, then I will accept it at any time. I will represent all the aristocrats here to teach you a lesson, you arrogant humble class child. Du Xiang saw that the number of nobles watching from the sidelines was increasing, and their eyes and actions were filled with encouraging hints. He felt that he was in the right and that he had the moral high ground. All of this made him even more lofty. Chapter 46. Although there is a gap between the second place and the first place, I can still touch his ass. Haha. Although we know each other, it's not a big deal to compete. Whether or not I can do it is another matter. It's always more interesting to give some tension and suspense. So, let's call everyone to vote. Can you be any more boring? The corner of Qin Wushuang's mouth twitched as he casually said these words. He ignored Du Xiang's enthusiasm and heroism. After all, that Yi Feng had some strength and was an offspring of a venerable family. On that day, Qin Wushuang was forced to defend himself and had no other choice. However, at the castle of the venerable De Shi family, he had to give De Shi Ming some face. Of course, he did not want to get involved with this strange guy. Seeing that Qin Wushuang had ignored his righteous reprimand and hearing the jeers from all around, Du Xiang felt that his dignity as a wealthy class aristocrat had been deeply trampled. Stay! With a whistling sound, he raised his right arm and threw a punch at Qin Wushuang's back. Sneak attack. An offspring of a wealthy class was sneakily attacking an offspring of the humble class in front of everyone. Stop, Du Xiang! Stop! A few reprimands came one after another. De Shi Yu and De Shi Yang rushed over at the same time. In the next moment, Du Xiang only felt a blur in front of his eyes. Then, one of his arms suddenly became numb as if it was tightly bound by an iron hoop. A wave of pain instantly spread throughout his entire body. Immediately, a waterfall of sweat poured down from his head. Qin Wushuang coldly stared at Du Xiang. His gaze was like lightning and his tone was cold. If you want to show off your superiority, it has nothing to do with me. Even if you were to provoke me maliciously, I would not argue with you because of the owner. However, since you shamelessly sneak attacked me from behind, then don't blame me for being impolite." As soon as he finished speaking, he used his strength and pulled. Crack! Du Xiang's right arm was instantly twisted into a fried dough twist and rolled backward. One of his arms was twisted into an incomparably twisted shape. With a miserable cry, Du Xiang fainted on the spot from the pain. Qin Wushuang said apologetically, "Miss De Shi, your guest is a bit unreasonable. Please forgive me for being too heavy-handed." De Shiyu had heard from De Shiming and the others about Qin Wushuang's methods. She knew that Qin Wushuang had already shown mercy. With Qin Wushuang's usual methods, he had already given Du Xiang a lot of face by not killing him on the spot. In this matter, you are not wrong. De Shiyu still had the ability to distinguish right from wrong. However, De Shiyu's honest words had caused all the aristocratic children to be shocked. Young Lady De Shiyu was actually exonerating a commoner. "Miss Yu, although it is wrong for Du Xiang to make the first move, this humble disciple is indeed somewhat arrogant." A male student who was also a disciple of a noble family said with a smile. "Young Master Mi's words are reasonable. Normally speaking, the children of humble families should not attend young Miss Yu's banquet." Du Xiang wanted to protect the dignity of the high nobles, but his intentions were good. Most of De Shiyu's classmates were studying at the Redwood Martial Arts Academy. The students inside came from Prince Akaji's 8 prefectures and 64 prefectures. Not to mention the descendants of the aristocratic families, there were also many descendants of the great clans. Thus, there were also many descendants of the aristocratic families who came to attend young Miss Yu's banquet. These descendants of the aristocratic families were the same as Yi Feng. They more or less had a sense of superiority as upper-class aristocrat. Of course, in Qin Wushuang's eyes, this sense of superiority was laughably childish. He slowly glanced at this group of so-called upper-class aristocrats who were indignant on behalf of Du Xiang, and lightly said, "My Qin family is indeed a humble class. Originally, I only attended this banquet because of De Shiming. Who would have thought that the people who attended this banquet were all narrow-minded people? If I had known earlier, I would not have come. If you all want to fight for justice for that sea, you can come and spar with me after this banquet. This is the banquet of the venerable De Shi family. If a conflict occurs, the host will not be able to tolerate it." As soon as these words were spoken, it immediately attracted boos from all around. Obviously, with Qin Wushuang's status as a humble class descendant, everyone felt that no matter how they looked at it, he did not have the right to say such words. One of the descendants of the aristocratic families sneered, "Son of the Qin family, do you know that with these words, you have offended all the aristocratic descendants here?" Qin Wushuang lightly smiled and casually said, "I did not plan to curry favor with anyone." After he had finished speaking, he did not care about the various expressions of this group of aristocratic descendants. He lightly smiled and turned to leave. Just as he was about to leave the main hall to get some fresh air, De Shiming happened to walk out from the back with Qin Xiu. With a glance, he saw the awkwardness of the situation. The smile on his face suddenly disappeared, and a trace of anger appeared between his brows. Of course, he knew that with Qin Wushuang's personality, he would never take the initiative to cause trouble. And his little sister De Shiyu's classmates, each of them had their eyes on top of their heads. Most of them were people who wanted to see the world in chaos. It was obvious who was right and who was wrong. He had previously hinted to De Shiyu, but he did not expect that this group of people would not know their place. "Brother Wushuang, please wait." Qin Wushuang turned around and smiled bitterly. "Big brother De Shi, it seems that the humble class descendants are not very popular here." De Shiming's face was gloomy as he turned to De Shiyu and said, "You heir, today you are the main character of the banquet. These people are your friends. I hope they will stop before they go too far." In fact, De Shiyu was also annoyed. She glared at Du Xiang, then looked around at the group of classmates who had an unfriendly expression. She said loudly, "Everyone, today you are all guests of the De Shi family. Regardless of your status or background. If you have any unjustifiable conflicts, you can solve them in private after you leave the De Shi family's door. If anyone dares to cause trouble at the banquet, then you are going against the De Shi family." As soon as the main character had spoken, each of those aristocratic descendants who had planned to cause trouble became stern. They retracted their bellyful of arrogance. Initially, they had wanted to show off in front of De Shiyu, and not to fight for justice for Du Xiang. Hearing De Shiyu's tone, it was obvious that she did not like them being too ostentatious. Naturally, they immediately retracted their arrogance. However, no matter how they looked at Qin Wushuang, they still felt that he was not pleasing to their eyes. Qin Xiu was smart and had naturally guessed what had happened. She walked over and held her little brother's arm with both hands. She looked at this group of aristocrats who were trying to cause trouble with caution. Although she did not have the strength to truss a chicken, she was on the same side as Qin Wushuang. No one would dare to bully Qin Wushuang in front of her. At this moment, an announcement came from the inner hall. Matriarch De Shi has arrived. Initially, the hall had been noisy. However, when they heard this loud announcement, they instantly became silent. Instantly, the three De Shi siblings' expression became sincere and respectful. Especially the aristocrats of River County, they knew the matriarch's superior position in the De Shi family. Each of them sat upright and still with a respectful expression as they waited for the matriarch to arrive. Under everyone's gaze, the matriarch with white hair and a youthful complexion slowly walked into the hall with De Shi Heng, the patriarch of the De Shi family. The matriarch was in high spirits and had a kind smile on her face. When she saw all the guests, she could not help but smile and nod. When she saw Qin Xiu from afar, the smile on her face became even brighter. She waved at Qin Xiu and motioned her to come over. De Shi Ming was overjoyed. "Grandmother wants us to go over." Earlier, De Shi Ming had brought Qin Xiu to visit the matriarch. Regardless of her appearance or personality, she had gained the matriarch's favor. She had already given De Shi Heng a lot of instructions in the back hall. She had hinted that she liked Qin Xiu a lot. If she were to choose a granddaughter-in-law, this daughter of the Qin family would be her first choice. De Shi Heng only smiled bitterly. He did not dare to object, nor did he dare to accept. Qin Xiu walked over and said politely, "Xiu wishes matriarch good health and a long life." Then, she waved at Qin Wushuang and introduced him. "This is Xiu Er's little brother, Qin Wushuang." Qin Wushuang smiled. "Nice to meet you, matriarch." "Good, very good, you look like a talent." The matriarch loved Qin Wushuang because she loved him. She gently patted his hand a few times with incomparable affection. However, Qin Wushuang was an expert in martial arts. When he shook hands with the matriarch, he could feel that the matriarch was also an expert in martial arts. Only, her pulse was empty, her temper was weak, and her liver was stagnant. Immediately, he smiled and said in a low voice, "I didn't expect that the matriarch was also an expert in martial arts. Wushuang had misjudged you." He had deliberately lowered his voice, so that only the matriarch and De Shi Heng could hear him. Although he did not mean to show off, he did want to reveal some of his strength. Of course, this was not to promote himself, but to fight for his sister, Qin Xiu. It was because he could see that the matriarch had a good impression of his sister. It was worth fighting for. As soon as he said these words, the matriarch was stunned. On the side, De Shi Heng's calm expression also showed some doubts. He looked at Qin Wushuang with a surprised expression. The matriarch was born with a congenital injury. She is lacking in vitality and needs to be nursed back to health. De Shi Heng asked in a low voice, "Why do you say that?" The martial arts that the matriarch practices should be of the feminine type. Plus, she is prone to excessive sexual activity. Usually, she would think too much about it, which caused her to miss the appointment. This caused the imbalance of yin and yang, causing her to go mad. Thus, all the meridians in her body were damaged and she lost all her power. In his previous life, Qin Wushuang was a grandmaster of martial arts and a divine doctor. He was not unfamiliar with such symptoms. Of course, he spoke frankly with assurance. At first, De Shiheng's face was full of doubt. However, when he heard the last part, his face became serious. He looked at Qin Wushuang with a whole new level of respect. Chapter 47. Second Update. The foreshadowing has ended, and we are about to enter the climax. Brothers, rise up. Come, come, come. The old lady had been sick for so many years, and she had become indifferent to it. However, De Shiheng was famous for being a filial son. When he saw that Qin Wushuang, a martial arts student who was about the same age as his youngest son, De Shiyang, could speak with such assurance, he was both surprised and moved. After some thought, his filial piety won over his status. He said in a low voice, "Little brother Qin seems to know a lot about medicine. May I ask, can my mother's illness be cured?" After a pause, Qin Wushuang sighed lightly. "She has accumulated too much, and her meridians have shrunk. There is no hope for her to recover her strength. However, it is not difficult to heal her body and prolong her life. If she is treated properly, perhaps she can recover 50 to 60% of her strength." The old lady had suffered from qi deviation for many years. Initially, she had almost lost her life. Now, her complexion looked good because De Shiheng had just used his genuine qi to heal her. Usually, the old lady's complexion looked dry and withered. In fact, she was on the verge of death. As a filial son, of course, De Shiheng did not want to see his mother suffer. He had invited countless famous doctors, but in the end they were all powerless. Qin Wushuang's eloquent words made him sound like an expert. De Shiheng would be lying if he said he was not moved. Whether or not my strength can be recovered is secondary. If my mother is cured, you will be the great benefactor of the venerable De Shi family. I will do everything I can to return this great favor." When Qin Wushuang heard his words, he only smiled lightly and looked at the crowd. After a while, he sighed lightly. If it were anyone else in River County, they would be so excited that they would not be able to sleep after hearing Patriarch De Shi's words. Only, from my point of view, Patriarch De Shi is no different from all the ordinary people in this hall. De Shiheng thought he had heard wrong. This martial arts student from the humble class had criticized him directly? A doctor has the heart of a parent. The person who can truly cure the old lady's illness might not care about your family's favor. I only told you the truth about the old lady's illness because of Big Brother De Shi Ming. As for human relationships, they were not important. Perhaps in your eyes, a favor from the venerable De Shi family is enough to make us, a humble class, deeply grateful. Haha, actually, that's not the case. Qin Wushuang was a grandmaster of his generation, and he naturally had his own pride. Since he was willing to help, he naturally wouldn't turn a good thing into a deal. If it was someone he didn't like, even if that person knelt down and begged him, he might not be willing to treat them. The first impression the old lady gave him was really good, which was why he was willing to help. De Shiheng froze for a moment and then laughed. Once again, he changed his view of this young martial arts student before him. He had never thought that the son of the humble Qin family would have such an extraordinary side to him. As the head of an aristocratic family, he was naturally shrewd and magnanimous. He immediately said, "This old man has misspoken. After the banquet is over, would you like to stay for a while, little brother Qin?" "No problem," Qin Wushuang replied, but his gaze was fixed on his sister, Qin Xiu. Inwardly, De Shiheng sighed and did not say anything. For the matter between de Shi Ming and Qin Xiu, if the Shi Men feudal lords didn't have an engagement, he could ignore the difference in social status and let it go. However, while he was thinking, a long call came from outside the door. The Shi Men feudal lords have invited guests, please welcome them quickly. Shi Men feudal lords? As soon as these words came out, the entire place became silent. Everyone looked at each other in dismay and did not dare to make a sound. It was as if the words, Shi Men feudal lords, were like a curse that had instantly petrified these people. Even De Shi Heng was stunned. Then, he suddenly realized and said with a serious face, Ming Yang come with me to welcome the guests. When the two brothers heard that it was the guests from the Shi Men feudal lords, they did not dare to neglect and immediately followed behind their father. Qin Wushuang blocked in front of Qin Xiu and said in a low voice, Sister, stand behind me. As the saying goes, those who come do not come with good intentions. Most likely, the people from the Shi Men feudal lords had come because of De Shi Ming's engagement. After a moment, Shi Men Qian, who was wearing an official robe and a jade belt, walked over with the support of the three De Shi family members. This Shi Men Qian was not more than 30 years old. His face was full of arrogance. His eyes were as sharp as a knife. After he walked in, he glanced around casually. Most of the people at the scene felt a chill run down their spine. This was the aura of an elite warrior. When the offspring of the feudal lords did not show up, they would shock the entire crowd. Since Shi Men Qian had come to this little river county, of course, he had to show off his status as a feudal lord. Indeed, the effect was extraordinary when he activated his aura. Each of the hundreds of people in the hall showed a respectful expression. Some were trying to please him, some were trying to flatter him, and some were trying to be humble. However, when he glanced at Qin Wushuang's face, his expression instantly froze. Qin Wushuang smiled casually with a calm face. He did not put Shi Men Qian's act in his heart and treated it as air. Shi Men Qian had never been a broad-minded person. If it were the offspring of the royal family, they could put on airs in front of Shi Men Qian. But this one? Shi Men Qian glanced at Qin Wushuang's clothes. If he was not mistaken, it should be the unique clothing of the humble class offspring, right? This made him feel extremely annoyed. He thought that the venerable De Shi family had degraded themselves. As an upper-class aristocrat, a humble-class descendant had appeared at their family banquet. If this matter were to spread out, they would become the biggest joke among the upper-class aristocrats. Patriarch De Shi, this is a small gift. Please accept it as a token of my respect. That short and vigorous guy behind Shi Men Qian narrowed his eyes and handed over a gift. De Shi Heng did not dare to neglect and accepted it respectfully. To the Shi Men feudal lords, they did not need to consider their gift. They could just give out any gift. After all, the status of the feudal lords was one level higher than the venerable class. Their power was incomparable. Condescending was equivalent to giving them face. The venerable De Shi family did not have the right to be picky about the weight of the gift. That vigorous guy glanced at Qin Wushuang's face. He had already figured out his master Shi Men Qian's thoughts. This humble class descendant had disrespected his master. Of course, he would have to suffer some hardship. Young Master Shi Men, please sit. De Shi Heng saw this but did not show it. He smiled and greeted him. Shi Men Qian did not hold back and casually sat down on the VIP seat. Most of the people present were from the wealthy class. There were also a few offspring of the venerable class. They were all De Shi Yu's classmates and had come from other counties. But the offspring of the feudal lords were the only one. There were no other branches. No one dared to object when Shi Men Qian sat down. On the contrary, many people were secretly whispering about how to get close to this young master of the Shi Men feudal lords. If they could use this opportunity to curry favor with the Shi Men feudal lords, it would be a pleasant surprise. The three brothers of the Su family had already met with Shi Men Qian at the mansion. At this time, They were blessed by the heavens and naturally came to curry favor. That Su Zhou even whispered a few words in Qin Wushuang's ear. While he was talking, he glanced at Qin Wushuang with an unfriendly gaze. Shi Men Qian had a playful smile on the corner of his mouth. He also looked over. But this time, he ignored Qin Wushuang and sized Qin Xiu up without any fear. Qin Xiu was somewhat scared by this rude gaze. She retreated 2 steps behind Qin Wushuang. Little brother de Shi Ming. Shi Men Qian suddenly laughed and waved at de Shi Ming. I haven't seen you for a few years, but you still look the same. Come, sit here. Let's talk about the old days. When de Shi Ming was young, he had sparred with Shi Men Qian at the Redwood King's birthday banquet. He had lost in 1 move. Since then, he had always been wary of Shi Men Qian. Now, when he saw Shi Men Qian first size Qin Xiu up and then call out to him, he knew what had happened. Immediately, he walked over in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Young Master Shi Men, you are a descendant of the feudal lords. How could de Shi Ming dare to call you brother? Shi Men Qian laughed. Of course, of course. You are engaged to my little sister. Speaking of which, you are my future brother-in-law. You don't have to worry about your family's status. Although it was not a profound hint, de Shi Heng's heart trembled when he heard it. Without a doubt, this meant that Shi Men Qian already knew the relationship between de Shi Ming and the young mistress of the Qin family like the back of his hand. Shi Men Qian did not hold back. Suddenly, he changed his tone. Recently, there was a rumor that you were close with a girl from the humble class in River County. Is this true? Although his tone was not harsh, it was full of dark clouds. A storm was brewing behind his back. Those who were sensitive could already feel the presence of a coming storm. Chapter 48. I'm calling again. I'm in the process of ranking up. Votes, votes, vote. Qin Wushuang was already suspicious about the intentions of the Shimen feudal lords, and now he was even more certain. It seemed that Shi Men Qian really did not have good intentions when he came here. He had the intention of denouncing them. De Shi Heng did not wait for his son to answer and immediately said with an apologetic smile, "This is just a rumor, young Master Shi Men, please do not believe it." Shi Men Qian smiled faintly. Just a rumor? Is it also a rumor that a pair of commoners attended your family's banquet? The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Shi Men Qian's words were like dark clouds covering the sky. De Shi Ming was stared at by Shi Men Qian, but he did not panic. Instead, he said indifferently, "Young Master Shi Men came here today to congratulate me, but to denounce me, is that right?" Shi Men Qian coldly said, "The daughter of the Shi Men feudal lords is willing to lower herself to marry you, but I will never allow you to do that kind of shady business. It's not because of jealousy, but because my Shi Men feudal lords can't afford to lose face. Don't you know that the mere rumor is already a great disrespect to our Shi Men feudal lords? What's more, we've been caught red-handed." After he had finished speaking, he stood up abruptly and stared at Qin Xiu, who was standing behind Qin Wushuang, with an unfriendly gaze. He clicked his tongue and commented, "Although you are a girl from a humble family, you have a pretty face. No wonder young Master de Shi is in such a daze. Patriarch de Shi, you don't need to deny this matter. I only want to hear one thing, how are you going to deal with the aftermath?" De Shi Heng had never thought that Shi Men Qian would go straight to the point without giving him any face. Moreover, his methods were thunderous and did not allow them to explain. He calmly glanced at the 3 Su brothers, knowing that the Su family must have been behind this matter to sow discord. After all, he was the patriarch of a venerable family. De Shi Heng did not lose his composure. "Young Master Shi Men, since our 2 families are engaged, the venerable De Shi family will follow the rules. When the wedding day arrives, we will complete the wedding. I won't let you down." Shi Men Qian laughed heartily, but his tone was incomparably awe-inspiring. The problem now is not whether the engagement will continue or not, but how to end this rumor. De Shiheng retreated in order to advance. He asked in a deep voice, "What is young Master Shimen's opinion?" Shi Men-chien said coldly, "If it were up to me, our families would be at peace. If you don't listen to me, the venerable De Shi family will bear all the consequences." It was an undisguised threat. Although De Shiheng was inwardly furious, his expression remained calm. He said lightly, "Please speak." "All right." Shi Men-chien waved his hand. "There is only one way to destroy the rumors. That is, either the venerable De Shi family or the humble Qin family will disappear from River County." Disappear? De Shiheng frowned. "The aristocratic seats are bestowed by the royal family and are controlled by the Zhen Wu holy place." "I don't understand what you mean by disappearing." "Don't understand." Shi Men-chien's face was gloomy, and the sneer on his face made him look even more ferocious. "If an aristocratic family wants a humble family to leave, there are at least 800 ways. Do you need me to teach you one by one?" His tone was like an adult reprimanding a child. After all, De Shiheng was the patriarch of a venerable family. His strength was at least at stage 6 of the genuine force. Compared to Shi Men-chien, he would only be stronger. However, the fact that his status was one level lower had created such a completely different scene. In the blink of an eye, a birthday banquet had turned into a battle of words. Those guests who had wanted to cause trouble for Qin Wushuang were secretly happy when they saw such a dramatic change in the situation. On the surface, they did not dare to gloat, but inwardly, they were waiting to watch the show. Weren't the venerable De Shi family arrogant? Could they still be arrogant before a feudal lord? The humble Qin family had thought that they had found a powerful backer. Now, this powerful backer was too weak before the Shi Men feudal lords. They had made a fool of themselves, right? Each time Shi Men-chien spoke, Qin Xiu's heart became colder. In the end, the arm that was holding on to Qin Wushuang could not help but tremble slightly. Qin Wushuang had been observing Shi Men-chien with cold eyes ever since he had walked in. After Su Zhou's whispers, Qin Wushuang had already realized that the Su family had found a powerful backer in the Shi Men feudal lords. It seemed that the Qin family had accidentally fallen into the whirlpool of power struggles between the feudal lords. Generally speaking, once a poor family fell into this kind of undercurrent, there was an 80 to 90% chance that they would become a sacrifice. Seeing that De Shiheng had not made a decision, that tough guy behind Shi Men-chien said with a cold voice, "Patriarch De Shi is the patriarch of the venerable family. At this critical moment you should be able to make such a decision without thinking. One thought is good and the other is evil. Patriarch De Shi would not treat the survival of the family as a game, right?" As the patriarch of the venerable family, De Shiheng was infuriated when he was scolded by this master and servant in front of everyone. He raised his arms slightly and held his head high. Blue veins bulged on his forehead. His entire body was like a ferocious beast that was ready to attack. His reaction also made Shi Men-chien alert. He crossed his hands to protect his vital part. He took a step back subconsciously and stared at De Shiheng. Although he did not think that De Shiheng had the guts to turn hostile, he would not dare to be careless in front of the patriarch of the venerable family. Heng! What are you doing?" A few loud shouts came from behind him. A few elders rushed out from the back hall. From their clothing and appearance, they were apparently the hidden elders of the De Shi family. Although De Shiheng had been interrupted, he did not lose his momentum. Instead, he gave a long sigh and shook his head with determination. "The venerable De Shi family has a bottom line. We will never do anything that offends the heavens." Shi Men-chien was intimidated by De Shiheng's imposing manner. He was somewhat fearful and laughed evilly. It's alright if Patriarch De Shi does not want to do it. Someone else will do it. Only, on this matter, the Venerable De Shi family must remain neutral. You are not allowed to interfere. Before De Shi Hung could speak, a few elders said, "The humble Qin family has nothing to do with the Venerable De Shi family. Why would the Venerable De Shi family interfere?" "That's right. If young Master Shimen has come because of this matter, then you have worried too much." Shimen Qian was extremely proud when he saw that the elders of the Venerable De Shi family had softened their tone. He laughed recklessly and nodded arrogantly. "Okay, since I can get your words, this trip is not in vain. Ha ha, this trip is not in vain." As he spoke, he shook his sleeves confidently and leisurely walked out. Hold on. Initially, the atmosphere in the hall was oppressive. Although this "hold on" was not loud, it was full of energy and broke the oppressive atmosphere. The original atmosphere, the original tone, everything had gone according to Shimen Qian's expectations. The situation was completely under his control. This way, this light shout appeared even more uncoordinated. Like a pearl falling onto a jade plate, it had broken this oppressive atmosphere. "Young Master Shimen, you can come and go as you please. This is your freedom. However, you seem to have forgotten that the person involved is right in front of you." Qin Wushuang spoke with a lazy voice. He was neither fast nor slow. However, he was calm and collected as if the feudal lord families were nothing in front of him. Shimen Qian's footsteps stopped. However, he did not turn around. He shrugged his shoulders and mocked. "Is it important whether a mere humble family is here or not?" "Important, of course it's important." As soon as this voice came out, everyone was stunned. It was because everyone clearly saw that the person who spoke was not Qin Wushuang, nor was it anyone else in the hall. Even Qin Wushuang, who was about to speak, could not help but frown. He looked outside the door in surprise. Everyone's gaze was focused outside the hall. It was obvious that the voice had come from that direction. Everyone wanted to see if the guest who dared to talk back to a feudal lord child had 3 heads and 6 arms. There were 2 people. One of them, Qin Wushuang, recognized him. It was that white-bearded examiner who had invited the humble Qin family to a banquet at the Windy Pool restaurant. However, he was not the main person in charge of this trip. The main person was the middle-aged man next to him. He had a square face, thick eyebrows, and big eyes that emitted a sense of righteousness. When he raised his sword-like eyebrows, he gave people a sense of authority. Apparently, the person who had spoken earlier was this man with sword-like eyebrows. Shimen Qian originally had a face of disdain. However, when he glanced at the plum blossom symbol on the chest of these 2 people, his expression immediately changed. Instantly, a wave of shock rose in his heart. 4 words flashed across his mind: Zhen Wu, holy place. Regardless of how arrogant Shimen Qian was, even if his eyes grew on his forehead, he still had to lower his head before the representatives of the Zhen Wu holy place. "Haha, you 2 must be the people in charge of the family class evaluation in River County?" After Shimen Qian had stabilized the situation, he called out to them. That man with sword-like eyebrows had a serious expression. He stared at the entire scene and nodded lightly. "Young Master Shimen, right? Earlier, I heard you say that if a venerable family wants to make a humble family disappear, there are thousands of ways. However, I am ignorant and inexperienced. Could you please enlighten me?" His tone was not friendly. Everyone could hear that behind this venerable envoy's unpleasant tone, there was a trace of anger. His words did not give any face to the Shimen feudal lords. Shimen Qian felt even more embarrassed. He had spoken arrogantly earlier because he held the highest position at the scene. No one dared to question his words. In fact, in the Bayou country, all aristocratic families were bestowed by the emperor himself. The Zhen Wu holy place carried out the order. The other powerhouses, even the 4 royal families in the Bayou country, did not have the qualifications to take away any aristocratic seat. There was only one way to take away the aristocratic seat. That was to challenge and defeat that aristocrat in the family class evaluation. Besides, only the emperor and the Zhen Wu holy place had the qualifications to take away the aristocratic seat. Shi Men-qian's arrogant words had clearly crossed the line. Of course, when the emissary of the Zhen Wu holy place heard it, it was inappropriate. Shi Men-qian's face turned green and white. The words he had just spoken had been completely denied by the emissary of the Zhen Wu holy place. This was the same as slapping his face. Inwardly, he felt extremely annoyed. A trace of ridicule flashed across Qin Wushuang's face. This Shi Men-qian was arrogant and despotic. He had just slapped the face of the venerable De Shi family, and now, the emissary of the Zhen Wu holy place had slapped his face. Indeed, this was karma. Chapter 49. Update. The gap between first place has shrunk a little. Today, I will work hard and see if I can shrink it a little more. Maybe I can even break Piggy's ass. Haha, give me some member clicks and recommendation tickets. Today, I will try my best. Shi Men-qian's subordinate saw that the atmosphere was not right. He smiled eerily and stepped out to help. "Two honorable envoys, my young master was only joking. You should not take it seriously." His intention was to promote fair competition. Didn't that humble Qin family challenge the wealthy Su family? As the #1 family in South Cloud State, the Shi Men feudal lords have the responsibility to maintain the family class evaluation in all counties. My previous words were only to remind the venerable De Shi family to remain neutral. We did not mean anything else. The man with the sword-like eyebrows frowned slightly. I sincerely hope that you have no other intentions. The Zhen Wu holy place is the host of the family class evaluation. If any other powerhouses were to interfere, not only would they hurt others, they would also hurt themselves. Thus, I said that the humble Qin family, as the party involved, should not receive any discrimination or unfair treatment when participating in the family class evaluation. As soon as he said these words, everyone was surprised. It was true that the Zhen Wu holy place was fair. However, it was only fair on paper and in principle. Between the feudal lords and the humble class, as long as the envoys of the Zhen Wu holy place had a clear mind, they should know which was more important. However, this great envoy before them seemed to be protecting the humble Qin family from his words. Had something gone wrong with his ears, or had the wind in the Bayou country changed? Since when did the face of a feudal lord family become less important than that of a humble class? Shi Men-qian also felt it was inconceivable. Based on common sense, even if his words were inappropriate, they could be dismissed with a laugh. It was a matter that could be taken lightly or seriously. Apparently, this envoy from the Zhen Wu holy place was deliberately exaggerating the matter. Without a doubt, this was not the Zhen Wu holy place expressing a fair attitude. There must be something else going on. However, in today's situation, Shi Men-qian also knew that since the envoy from the Zhen Wu holy place had spoken, he would lose his face for sure. It would be a fool's dream to get back his face. The longer he stayed, the more he would lose his face. Immediately, he cupped his hands and said lightly, "Shi Men-qian had misspoken earlier, please forgive me. Now that this matter is settled, I'll take my leave first. Excuse me." After he finished speaking, he walked out with an ashen face. The scions of the great clans couldn't afford to lose their temper in front of the true martial sacred grounds emissary, but that didn't mean they couldn't put on airs. They had reached the 5th position among the 12 great feudal lords in the country and were one of the few powerhouses in the entire Bayou country. Naturally, they had their own supporters and connections in the Zhen Wu holy place. The man with sword-shaped eyebrows and the white-haired old man looked at each other and nodded. They did not stop him. Qin Wushuang suddenly smiled faintly and said leisurely, "Young Master Shiman, there is something that is not very pleasant to hear, but I would like to advise your excellency. People will always humiliate themselves, and their descendants will humiliate them. Tycoon clans and aristocratic families? They were nothing in front of an expert. First, you humiliated the venerable De Shi family. Then, you humiliated the humble Qin family. In fact, you have humiliated yourself, and you cannot blame others for humiliating you." His words were so loud that even the deaf could hear them. Everyone was stunned. They had all seen Qin Wushuang's arrogance in front of the rich and powerful. However, they did not expect that this son of the Qin family would be so stubborn. Before the children of the feudal lords, he had spoken without fear. Now, those children of the venerable families who had prejudiced against Qin Wushuang could not help but fall into deep thought. They felt somewhat ashamed. They thought that although Qin Wushuang was a child of the humble class, they were far inferior to him in terms of courage and pride. They asked themselves, under such circumstances, would they dare to challenge Shi Menqian? Instantly, Shi Menqian's anger had reached its peak. Usually, if a child of the humble class had dared to provoke him, he would have already made a move and taught him an unforgettable lesson. However, under the current circumstances, he could only suppress his anger. He sized Qin Wushuang up again and again. With a head full of black lines, he said coldly, "Son of the Qin family in South Cloud State, you are the first person who dared to speak such words to the Shi Men feudal lords. Sooner or later, you will understand that this is a price that you, a humble class, cannot bear." "I will wait and see." Qin Wushuang smiled calmly. In his former world, at least 10 people who were 10 times more capable than Shi Menqian had threatened him. However, in the end, none of them could fulfill their promise. Earlier, Qin Lianshan had been chatting with a few aristocrats he knew from River County in the backyard. He had only come to the main hall after the incident had happened. When he heard Qin Xiu talk about this matter, he was still angry. When he heard that the Shi Men feudal lords had intervened, he became even more worried. In the end, a birthday banquet had become a rehearsal for the infighting between all the powerhouses. The 2 emissaries from the Zhen Wu holy place exchanged a few words with De Shi Heng. After they had given him a gift, they did not stay for long. That white-bearded emissary looked at Qin Wushuang. He only smiled and did not get too close to him. The guests were deeply worried. After they had eaten hastily, they bid farewell and left. Everyone knew that this time, the venerable De Shi family had angered the Shi Men feudal lords. Who were the Shi Men feudal lords? They were one of the strongest existences in the entire Baiyu country. They were the number 1 family in South Cloud State and without a doubt, the number 1 family. Compared to them, what did the venerable De Shi family, which was only a county lord, amount to? De Shi Heng had seen everything clearly. However, he did not expose them and just let them be. The wind knows the strength of the grass, and the distance knows the strength of the horse. At such a crucial moment they could see some things that they would not have been able to see normally. In a moment most of the guests had left. The remaining people were the best friends of the venerable De Shi family. However, the humble Qin family did not leave. Before De Shi Heng could speak, Qin Wushuang said, "Patriarch De Shi, please prepare an empty room for the matriarch's illness. I will treat her now." De Shi Heng blushed. Inwardly, he admired Qin Wushuang's breadth of mind. Previously, when Shi Menqian had shown his power, although De Shi Heng did not add insult to injury, he had already distanced himself from the humble Qin family. Unexpectedly, Qin Wushuang did not care about the past and was still willing to treat the matriarch. It was enough to show his breadth of mind. Qin Wushuang seemed to have seen through De Shi Heng's thoughts. He smiled and said, I already said that I am only treating the matriarch because of Brother de Shi. What does this have to do with me? Now, de Shi Hung truly realized that this young man before him was not pretending to be noble and virtuous. Indeed, he was a man of noble character and unquestionable integrity. He did not want anything from the venerable de Shi family. Or else, with the previous situation, Qin Wushuang would have left earlier. The matriarch's illness was due to the damage to her girdle artery. Naturally, the treatment method was to treat the girdle artery and the 3 Yinjiao acupoint. He would use gold needles and genuine qi to guide the flow once a day for half an hour. The acupuncture technique was Qin Wushuang's specialty in his former world. When he performed it, even ghosts and gods would not be able to predict it. As soon as he inserted the needle, he immediately displayed the power of the great saint's hands. Plus, with Qin Wushuang's sun force, it was the best way to expel the yin and dampness. After a moment, the matriarch's originally gloomy face regained its color. Compared to De Shi Heng's genuine qi, it was much more effective. Matriarch, after half a month of acupuncture, your body will be completely healed. As for how much strength you can recover, it depends on your luck. It is not the work of a human. The matriarch was so happy that she could not close her mouth. I am almost 80 years old, and half of my body is already in the grave. Strength is not important. I only hope that I will not be tormented by illness in my later years. From today onwards, the humble Qin family is the great benefactor of the venerable De Shi family. You must remember, the venerable De Shi family never betrays anyone, not to mention our benefactor. De Shi Hung did not dare to refute and only nodded. I know that those elders in the family are clear-cut. They are wise to protect themselves in front of the Shi men feudal lords. They are not wrong, but I want you to remember that repaying kindness is the basic bottom line of a person. Just as De Shi Hung was hesitating on how to answer, Qin Wushuang smiled freely. Matriarch, there is no need to mention the benefactor. Although the humble Qin family is lowly, we are not the type to ask for favors. I performed the acupuncture because I hit it off with Brother De Shi. If someone from the Shi men feudal lords was lying on the sickbed, even if they kneeled and begged me, I would not perform a single needle. Before De Shi Hung could react, Qin Wushuang had already walked out of the door. When he met up with his father and sister in the main hall, Qin Wushuang cupped his hands toward De Shi Ming and his brother. De Shi, tomorrow at this time, please take your grandmother to the inn. She will be healed after half a month of acupuncture. De Shi Hung only came out from behind the door when he saw the Qin family had walked out. He looked at Qin Wushuang's back with a dignified expression. After a while, he gave a long sigh. Father, why are you sighing with emotion? De Shi Yang was stunned. In the future, the humble Qin family will rise because of this kid. Yang forgive me for speaking bluntly. Although your score on the martial arts student exam is one level higher than Qin Wushuang, in terms of strength, this kid? I can only say that this kid is not a fish in a pond. Soon, this little river county will not be able to hold him. Father, although the Qin family used to be a wealthy class and had hidden their strength, Shi Men Qian still holds a grudge. I think that in the future, the humble Qin family will have a hard time. De Shi Yang spoke his thoughts one by one. De Shi Hung only smiled and did not speak. He looked at De Shi Ming and wanted to see his eldest son's opinion. Qin Wushuang, just like his name, regardless of talent or personality, he is unparalleled in the country. Not to mention this little river county, I am afraid that sooner or later, even the Bayou country will not be able to hold him. His limit is in the spiritual world. It was the highest compliment that De Shi Ming could give. It was also the highest compliment that a young person in the Bayou country could receive. Even Shi Men Qian, who had defeated him in one move, had never received such high praise from De Shi Ming. De Shiheng nodded and firmly affirmed De Shiming's words. Shi Men Qian is asking for humiliation. One day, he will suffer a great loss because of this kid. Shi Men feudal lords. Haha, maybe it's time for South Cloud State to change. This sigh contained a myriad of complicated meanings. It was full of expectation and also some regret. He was looking forward to the change in South Cloud State. Regretfully, it seemed that he had not grasped some unknown opportunities regarding the humble Qin family. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.